The London system. If you're watching this video, maybe you're a lazy person. That's what they all say. And that's because the London system can be played against anything that black plays against. You just need to know the setup. For example, the knight goes to f3, your bishop goes to d3. This is the starting setup. And, obviously you're going to get your king out the center of the board. Whenever they play c5, play c3 to support your pawn. A lot of person make the mistake and play c4. Just pull your bishop back to c2. Your knight will be jumping to e5, knight d2 to f3 is a plan. And I like to tell people to play this move h3, so that way if the knight harasses you on h4, you hide the bishop on h2, and then this bishop on h2 comes in very handy on this diagonal. Now, once this knight goes to d2, this is the London system. Now, there's a reason the London system is one of the most hated openings by chess players. You're about to learn all the moves, all the middle game ideas, all the end game plans from this one video. I want you to watch the full video, apply what I teach, and watch your ratings go through the roof. Kicking things off on the 500 region, today I'm going to be showing you guys the London system, the opening that you could play against anything, regardless of, and not knowing any opening theory. And we're now playing the London system against the King's Indian defense. Let's continue with the regular move. Pawn goes to e3, pawn goes to c3. We know the setup. Bishop to g7 was played. Let's play pawn e3. He castled his king. Now, let's just continue with our development for now. Knight goes to d2. We're just putting the pieces exactly where we know they belong because we're playing the London system. Now, there's one important move that you guys want to keep in mind when it comes to the London, though. And I don't see a lot of person do it. And it's this move, pawn to h3. It's not necessarily just a wasting move, and it's not only to prevent pieces from going to g4. It is to allow our bishop to get all the way back to h2 if this knight on f6 decides to go to h5 and attack it. If you don't play h3 and the knight goes to h5, you're going to be losing your bishops, which is better than knights. So pawn c5, apply some pressure to our center. Let's just play pawn c3. We're just doing our regular setup. And now the opponent decided to take. Now, this is no a matter of preference. Like, personally, I prefer to take with the e pawn, so I'm going to recommend that you take with the e pawn. But if you're going to be taking with the c pawn, just ensure that you control the c file. So now I'm going to be taking with the e pawn, which means my plan is to put a rook on the e file. I'm not sure why he played pawn e6, because usually if you're going to play like King's Indian setup, the plan is to eventually play e5. So e6 is a waste. It also blocks out the bishop. Let's continue with our regular setup. Like, if you guys notice, I haven't been thinking as yet. The only move that you could say I play that maybe you guys don't know is pawn h3. And a lot of person knows about pawn h3. So knight c6 develops the knight. Now we simply get our king out the center of the board. And what do we do when all our minor pieces have been developed? Once all the minor pieces has been developed, we start to focus on our major pieces. Now, pawn e5 looks like it was a bad move, but I don't think it was, because my bishop on d3 is unprotected. So even though he only has two pieces covering the e5 square, and I have one, two, three pieces, I have to be very careful here, because the moment I take on e5 and he takes back on e5, my bishop is going to be under attack, and my bishop on d3 is also going to be under attack. So instead of taking the pawn, since my bishop is under attack, I'm actually going to pull it back to e. Nah, it needed to go back to like h2 to maintain this diagonal. Pulling it back to e3 is fine, by the way, but I think it's better going back to h2. The good thing is I'm not getting forked on e4. Yeah, this is one of the whole point why we don't want to be lose. We didn't want to put the bishop on e3. But I can fix it though. I can always put my bishop back to g5 and attack the queen, because I'm not afraid of f6, because f6 basically blocks out his bishop. And if he plays f6, that's one less attacker on my d4 pawn. Now if he moves the queen, I am now able to take on e5, because my bishop being unprotected is fine. So he still decided to play f6. Now I pull the bishop back to h4, just keeping my bishop. There's no fork on e4. And I have two defenders on d4. He has two attackers on d4. And he's blocking out his dark squared bishop on g7. Knight f4, very good. Guy's playing very aggressive, by the way. He's now attacking this bishop, and we're still not planning on giving him any of our bishops. So let's just pull this back to c2. The plan is still to get the major pieces in the game. Eventually, I'm also planning on neutralizing this knight as well. On g5, see, we're seeing more aggression, more aggression. All right, so the bishop is under attack. Let's just pull the bishop back to g3. Pawn g4 here would be a very interesting and annoying move, but the plan is still simple. We want to put our rook on e1, and because this knight is on f4 and it seems annoying, if pawn g4, we take on g4, and then we get rid of the knight. So pawn f5 was played instead, so maybe now he wants to play pawn g4, and he's also allowing his bishop to be a bit more open, and maybe he wants to play e4 to attack my knight. So first thing I'm going to do is play this check to force his king over in the corner. I mean, if he plays pawn to d5, then that's going to be a good opportunity for me to take on e5. But I'm assuming he's going to just move his king in the corner. And that's when I may take on d4. Like, I want to make it a case where once he pushes e4, I'm able to put my knight on the d4 square. So now that the king moves, let's take on e5. He takes back on e5. And let's see, let's go knight to c4. I'm offering a trade of queens, but this is because his queen is actually one of the main defender of his g5 pawn. So trading the queens off the board, once I'm able to take back, he has to be careful about his pawn on g5. So he took, let's take back. All my pieces are active, by the way. And he saw that and he immediately played pawn to g4. All right, so he has two defenders on e5. I have two attackers on e5. So not winning any material just yet. I'm still going to take on g4 though, because once he takes, I'm able to play this move, knight to g5, which not unlike comes with some little knight f7 ideas, which is not going to work now if he plays h6. But my knight could always get access to the square on e4. But I mean, this 500 guy is playing very well so far. He hasn't blundered or anything. If you want to play against me, just leave your username in the comment and the elo and expect a message. Okay, knight to e2 check, hit the king, hit the bishop. King now has to move, and I'm assuming he's gonna take my bishop. Now I could take with the pawn and open the file for the rook, but yeah, it also doubles up my pawn. So let's take with the king, especially since king activity is also very important in the endgame. The move I'm expecting now is h6. If h6, I could play rook h1 to ensure that his pawn is pinned. But if he insists on attacking my knight, well, his king is not going to be able to move. Okay, he plays rook f4. Not bad. I think he knows that I want to put my knight on e4. So he's basically playing rook f4 before h6. But I definitely have a lead in development on this guy. So let's go knight d6. Knight d6 is a very nice move. I like knight d6. Not only does it attack his bishop, which I have no intention of taking. If he moves the bishop, he loses this pawn. But my intention is actually to check him on f7. If he allows me to check on f7, he's going to be forced to put his king on the same diagonal as my bishop. And that's when the discovered attacks is going to start coming in. Now he plays bishop to f6. What did bishop to f6 do? So he moves his bishop out the way, and he's basically prepared for the check. Like, if I check his king, he's going to be moving the king to g7. Another very good move from my opponent. And it's also attacking my knight. Now, okay, where do I put the knight? I'm not able to play something. Well, there is rook h1 actually. But then if bishop takes and I check, that's his opportunity to sack the rook. So let's play knight e4. I'm going to be using do I use this knight or this knight? Let's just use the G knight, because my knights are actually super strong in the center of the board. I mean, I can always still check him on f7, but I'm not going to check on f7 right now because the king gets some escaping square. The only piece that I have that is not doing anything is my rook on f1, and once I play rook h1, every single piece is going to be active. 500s are playing like 1000 these days, and then the 1000s are playing like 500 these days. Bishop back to e7. All right, so he's trying to neutralize my knight. It doesn't really do much though. If he takes, I'm just going to take back. So let's just use the time to activate my least active piece, rook to h1. Remember, if there's no forcing moves in the position, well, there is a forcing move in the position, which is a check, but it just doesn't do anything. So let's just say there's no good forcing move in the position. Whenever you don't have good forcing moves in the position, the whole idea is to set up these forcing moves. So, okay, he took my knight. Let's just take back his bishop. I don't think that was the best, Mr. Crescent, because you're giving up your bishop for a knight. But let's see, maybe he wants to trade all the pieces off the board and draw the game. He still has he still needs to develop his pieces. And the moment he moves the bishop, he loses this pawn. So it's still kind of hard for him. On the other hand, every single piece that I have is active. Rooks needs files, bishop needs long diagonal, and the knight needs to be in the center of the board. King needs to be active in the endgame. All right, now he decides to play bishop to f5, but we already spoke about that. The moment he moves the bishop, then his b7 pawn is hanging. But do we take the bishop? And I think it's actually best to take the bishop and then play rook to d7 instead of taking the pawn this way. It's best we get rid of the bishop because bishops are obviously better than knights. And because my rooks are active, now that I play rook to d7, it's over. Because, okay, his b7 pawn is dead, but that's not even the whole point of anything. I'm targeting his pawn on h7, which it looks like he didn't see because he decided to guard the pawn on b7. And because my bishop prevents his king from going over, that's just checkmate. More London system against 600 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 600. Let's play some more London system. B5, we go bishop f4 or knight f3. Doesn't really matter. Knowing the setup is what matters. Knight c6. Let's play knight f3. Pawn e6 blocks out this bishop though. But let's continue. Pawn e3, regular London plan. Bishop to d6. And what I like to do when they play bishop to d6 is usually I like to play knight e5 and then take with the pawn and attack them. But for now, I'm going to pull my bishop back to g3. If he takes, I take with the pawn, my rook gets the file. And if he continues to develop, I'll go bishop d3, knight d2, castle my king. This is the whole idea. Knight f6, let's go bishop d3. Pawn to a6 was played, and now I'm going to play pawn c3, trying to avoid some knight going to b4. That could be very annoying. All right, so the king is castled. Let's play knight d2. Let's continue with our development. Eventually, we're going to be putting a knight on e5 and then try to start some attack on his king. Like a knight on e5 is a very nice idea when you play the London system. It also makes it very hard for them to play pawn to e5. So bishop to d7, he's trying to finish his development. Let's just get our king out the center of the board first. And another thing in addition to knight e5 is pawn e4. Okay, all right, he took on h3, on g3. Let's just stay back towards the center of the board. Now I'm not going to play knight e5 anymore. More than likely, I'm going to play pawn e4. It's very similar to the Kohler system, except usually when we play e4, the bishop is already on c1. Knight g4, not sure what that does actually. Maybe he wants to play f5. I mean, a queen is definitely not going to join the attack. Let's play e4. And this is the plan in the London. After you get your setup, try to play e4 or c4. And usually we play c4 if we can't play e4. So now once you know the plan, you get your major pieces in the game. From here, it's just going to be chess. Knight back to e7. Can I just play e5 and just... Okay, let's not rush, because if he takes, I like that anyway. So let's play queen e2. Let's remain principled. Let's finish our development, do the pawn break, connect to our rooks. That's an unprotected knight. With that being said, once I move my knight, his knight is going to be under attack. Pawn c5. Okay, guys, let me show you guys something. I'm going to play rook e1. Don't like the video if he doesn't play c4. Everybody plays c4 in these types of position. And c4 is just bad. Because if it's best if they take, if everybody plays c4, and it just allows me to pull my bishop back to c2, play e5, and then I get this massive attack on their king. All right. So in my defense, he didn't play c4, but he allowed me to take on c5. Please like the video. Let's take on c5 here. That's a free pawn, by the way, because I'm able to play b4 and protect it. I kind of want him to take, but if queen takes, knight f6, defend against the mate. If he takes, I'm going to play knight takes, guard the pawn, jump into e4. Queen g5? That's a queen, bro. Come on, that's a queen, bro. Yo. When he plays pawn to e5, just trying to protect his knight. I mean, my knight is hanging, but let's just take on d5. Because if he takes my knight, I take his knight, and I'd really like to trade the pieces off the board here. I'm also trying to find some ways to set up some checkmates. Like if my queen was on e4, getting to h7 is mate. His knight going back to f6 guards the mate. So I may play knight h7, then queen e4. Let's see. So he moves his knight out the way. And as we said before, we're going to play knight h7 to hit the rook. So that way, once I play f3 and attack the knight, the only square that he could put the knight is f6. And if knight f6 I take and his king is exposed, or just maybe I could have just take the free pawn. Instead, he plays bishop f5. All right. We're trading pieces here, so I'm happy with that. Let's just trade. First, let's take the free knight. Let's take the free knight. If he takes my knight, I take his bishop. And then once he plays king takes, this pawn is also hanging. Yeah, it's no just GG's. Knight g6 is also bad because, like, if you guys do the math, two rooks are better than a queen. Two rooks are 10, a queen is 9. So anytime you have an opportunity to sack your queen for two rooks, like more than 50% of the time, it's good to accept such sacrifice. Once his rook takes, my rook takes, and it's over. Now I take. It's just a matter of rolling my pawns up the board and setting up checkmate here. And the opponent resigns. More London system against 700 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 700. Let's play some more London system. F5 is interesting against the London, but let's just continue with our setup to see which. This is the Dutch defense that he's playing, by the way. B6, let's just play the same setup. It's a system, as we said, so it doesn't really matter what they play. We're just going to be ensuring that we finish our development as quickly as possible. So E6, we put the. Actually, putting the bishop on e2 would have made a lot of sense. Because one thing I just remember is whenever there's this bishop on this very long diagonal, it's usually a good idea to move the knight, play bishop f3, trade it off. But it's fine, still gonna just castle, play knight d2, c3, regular English stuff. Not English, London. Knight d7, he's developing his pieces. I'm gonna do the same. Let's go knight d2. That's a weak pawn, by the way. I'm trying to think about how I'm gonna be attacking it, but I want to attack it when it's hard for him to defend. Now he plays d5. So this bishop on b7, he just blocked in his own bishop. Don't do that, guys. He's also weakening the e5 score. And because he's weakening the e5 score, our minor pieces are finished. After the minor pieces, we think about the major pieces. To get the major pieces in the game, it's about pawn breaks. But we can't really play e4 because this is a Maraxibine. And if we play c4, he takes his bishop is good. So let's just play knight e5, improving our knight. Knight e5 is going to be one of those moves that you play in the London a lot, by the way. And because he played f5, it also opens this diagonal pointing towards his king. So he needs to be careful. He took the knight. Let's just take with the bishop. Decent diagonal for my bishop. Okay, so knight h6, we see him putting his knight on the edge of the board. Not recommended, by the way. I need to think about my major pieces, though. So I'm going to play queen e2, connecting the rooks. It's very important that you connect your rooks. And then he plays a6. Guess he's trying to prevent the bishop from going to b5. Wasn't planning on doing that, though. We're going to be trying to do a pawn break. And as we said, c4 is fine. But even though e4 seems impossible, if we play f3, e4 becomes possible because now we're supporting it with a pawn. So it's 1, 2, 3 pieces he has covering the square. And by the way, guys, ensure that you know how to count. Like a lot of my students, they don't really know how to count, so I'm teaching them how to do it, but ensure that you guys know how to do this. So I have 1, 2, 3 pieces on the square. He has 3 pieces on the square, which means pawn to e4 is gonna be good. But then he plays bishop to d6, which is just a drawback mistake. Like, okay, he's developing, he's following principles. One thing I remember saying is you need to put 50% effort into, no, not 50% effort, but you need to treat it like 50-50. Why do I think this move is the best move? What could be possibly wrong with this move? Because he blundered, bishop guarding g7, bishop no longer guarding g7. That's just a fart, bro. All right, so he saves the rook, lost the knight, queen h4, hits the bishop and threatened mate. I would have played bishop f4 though. Queen f6 was played to hit the unprotected bishop. And I'm in a little dilemma here. First of all, I'm not going to lose my bishop. I'm ahead by 4 points, so I know that I'm winning. But I have to play bishop f4, which means my pawn on e3 is overworked because it's guarding both d4 and f4. So now that he took on f4 and I take back, my pawn on d4 is no longer guarded. But he didn't take the pawn. He played queen to h6 instead to attack my unprotected pawn on f4. What offense is the best defense? So I'm going to try targeting his e6 pawn. Now, the e6 pawn is being guarded by the queen, but we also know that the king is in the center of the board, and because my queen is on the same line as his king, the pawn on e6 is pinned. What do we know about pinned pieces? They don't protect, which means we're now able to play bishop takes f5. He got his king out the center of the board, but look what he did. He puts his king on a light score. His rook is now on a light score. I have won two pieces attacking e6. He only has the queen guarding e6. So once I take on e6, I'm forking the rook and I'm winning the game. However, I could take with the bishop, the king move, then I grab the rook. But because I'm ahead by 5 points, I want to play queen takes e6 instead because this forces the queens off the board. He now has to take with the queen, and then once I take on e6, I'm not just forking his rook. So once the king move, we take this free rook, and now we're just winning the game. We're now ahead by an entire rook with couple pawns. Well, convert this is simple. First of all, rooks needs files. Let's just put everything on open file. The rook is also heading to the 7th rank because rooks on the 7th is in heaven. And the plan from here is just to put two rooks on the 7th rank. Another thing that the opponent is doing that is incorrect, he's trading. In fact, he's initiating the trades. You don't want to be down in material and initiating trades. Now I'm just going to hit the bishop, roll the pass pawn up the board. And he resigns. Our opponent is now 800. Let's play some more London system. Bishop f4. E6, we go knight f3, regular stuff, knowing the setup. Pawn c5, we go e3, followed by c3. And this is the whole idea of the London. Bishop is going to d3. We're going to castle on the queen side. And usually they play bishop to d6. This is also a good way to play against the London as well. But what I like to do whenever they put their bishop on d6 is just to put my knight on e5. Because if they take with their knight, that's a fork. And, if they give up their bishop for a knight, I'm happy with that. Okay, so he took on d4. I like to take with the e pawn so I can always put a rook on the e file. By the way, guys, no need to take on d4 unless it helps you. Like, this is only helping white's position. Because now it's very easy for me to get all my pieces in the game. He pulls the bishop back. I don't know why he would put the bishop on d6 just to pull it back to e7. That's wasting time, bro. Let me just get my king out the center of the board. From here, I'm trying to play knight d2 to f3, maybe rook e1, and then my pieces are going to be perfectly lined up to attack his king. So he castle. Let's play knight d2, finishing our development. Rooks needs files. Knight is going on f3. Or maybe I'm going to play queen f3 to h3 just to ensure that my queen is on the attack. There's a lot of stuff I could do here. All right. After knight takes, I actually like to play pawn takes because, I'm not really going to use my bishop on this diagonal. I want to use my bishop on this diagonal. And pawn takes remove his knight, which is one of the main defender of his king. So now it's going to be very easier for me to bring even more pieces in the attack. Okay, but then he played knight to e4, which is just giving me a free pawn. I mean, I have two pieces on the square. He only has one. So let's just take the knight. And if he takes, I take. I guess he wants to trade the queens off the board, but you shouldn't want to trade if you're going to be down by a pawn. And it's also going to be very easy for him, very hard for him to develop because his bishop is not going to be able to get to d7. Okay, he didn't trade. He played queen to b6 instead. Thinking about queen to g4. If he takes the pawn, queen h6, force him to play g6, and then we take the rook. Don't need to do all of that though. Let's go queen c2. Guard the pawn, attack his pawn, because I'm actually trying to get my rooks over towards his king. This is a very nice idea. Getting the rooks on the files first, and then do a rook lift to have the rooks pointing towards the king. It's very easy to get some nice attack that way. All right, so pawn g6 guards the h7 pawn. Let's play rook e1. Trying to get my rook in the game, or I'm trying to get my rook into the attack. Rook up to d7 is good. That's a very good move. He's just finishing his development. Let's play rook to e3. My plan is to get the rook on h3, get the queen on h6, and then take on h7. That's my plan. Pawn to f5. Okay, it's a good move. I mean, it attacks my bishop. I'm gonna take the pawn though, en passant. But it really helps this position a bit, but it also helps my bishop as well. This rook on a1 isn't really doing anything, so I need to swing this piece in the game. So he took with the bishop. My bishop on f4 is unprotected though. So how do I do this? Okay, first let's play rook d1 to attack his unprotected bishop. Now I'm sure that all my pieces are active. And then after he defends his bishop, I may play bishop to d6, maybe even rook to d6, or bishop h6. The good thing is, bishop takes g6, sacrificing my bishop, exposing his king is a very nice idea. So he guarded the bishop. Can I sack? Sack takes check, bishop block. After bishop block, bishop h6, rook f7, and then rook g3, and then we're winning back the. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. Let's go bishop takes g6. It's a very nice move. He's able to defend g7 only with two pieces. I'm able to attack g7 with three pieces. So that has to win back the bishop. And if I sack my bishop, get two pawns, and win back his bishop, it's just game over. It's an interesting move, but it just doesn't do anything. I mean, bishop a5, that's just a free bishop. Maybe he thinks after I take, oh, if I takes, he takes here. But here's what I'm going to do. Let's take on h7 first, since it comes with check. And I'm already ahead by 3 points. Now, once he moves his king, then I'll take the bishop. And eventually he's going to take back my bishop. Oh, nah. Guess I was wrong. That's not the move. He wants to get mate. Queen to g6 check. King to e7. I have nothing there. Okay, let's just take the free bishop. Not sure why he gave me a free bishop though. If his king was on h8, at this point he would have took my bishop. But he didn't. Now I'm ahead by 6 points. Okay, rook takes. Let's just play queen takes. Still ahead by 6. Maybe he's gonna play rook to d8. But queen to h5 could lead to some stuff. Okay, so rook to d8. Let's play queen h5 check. Need to be careful not to get checkmated on the back rank. I'm expecting king e7, which is what he played. And how do we do this? Let me just play h3, just to be sure. Like, my back rank is secured, but there's a lot of places that I'd love to put my queen. Now that my back rank is secured, I could really go and attack his king. Okay, rook h8 pins my bishop. I need to get out of this pin. Let's play queen g6, just getting out of the spin. There's also bishop g5 that is coming, trading off the bishops. Trading off the dark squared bishops will make it easier for me to attack him. All right, so he pulls the queen back to d8. Let's continue with the plan. Bishop to g5, trying to trade. If he checks, I play king up. He has nothing. Maybe he checks again, but then I just block the check. So now I'm just trying to get the pieces off the board. Okay, he took. Can I check? I mean, I could take. If the king ever goes over, I check. So I think I should just take. And then if king f8, I check here. And if king e8, I check here. And if king e7, I check here. And the moment the king goes to the d file, I just play rook to d3. So just taking the bishop is good enough. Anytime he goes to the d file, the queen is lost. And I am able to force him to go to the d file. Okay, he just went on his own. So let's just give it the check, pick up the queen, and this is GG's. All right. All right, that's just a rook, bro. All right, let's just take here. And he resigns. More London system against 900 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 900. Let's play some more London system. Knight f6. Let's just go knight f3. Pawn c5, and now I'm going to play pawn e3. This is how I recommend that you guys play against the London system, by the way. Knight c6, queen b6, target the b2 pawn, because the weakest pawn in the London is actually the b2 pawn, because we develop the bishop and then we play pawn e3, so it's kind of hard to defend this pawn. But there's a lot of sacrificial ideas that we could do to not lose the pawn and to win the opponent's queen. So pawn to e6 was played. Let's just play pawn c3, sticking to the setup. Knight to c6 was played. And from here, I'm just going to continue with my development. Bishop to d3, knight d2, castle the king. Pawn to c4. I've seen pawn to c4 a lot of times. Let's see if he's going to play it. Knight to h5. That's a very nice move. That's a very nice move. And you guys are going to hear me say play h3 a lot. So pawn to h3 is actually a crucial move. But I'm actually going to, the best way to try to use this against him is maybe play bishop e5. If he has to get the bishop, I want to at least let him keep this knight on the edge of the board. So for example, if he takes my bishop, I play pawn takes, and it's hard for him to go back. But then he plays f6 instead, which is very good. Now, after f6, I'm thinking about just moving my knight out the way. If I move my knight out the way, it automatically attacks his knight. So maybe putting the knight on the edge of the board this quickly was a bit premature. Um, Is it knight h4? Knight h4, pawn g6, then I'm able to sack and then take. Yeah, let's go knight h4. Because now if he takes my bishop, I'm able to take his knight with check. And if he plays g6 to protect the knight first, I don't move my bishop. We play knight takes g6, pawn takes g6, bishop takes g6 check. And then once the king move, we win back the knight. And all right, he's also gonna win our bishop. So let's think. I need to think about this. Nah. Well, I think he should have played g6. Now I take on h5 with check. Pawn g6 is not good, so he played king to d7. And I mean the position is equal, except no. That's just a free pawn. And yeah, I mean we're just ahead by a pawn here. But I'm not gonna lie, this knight h5 move is dangerous, and you need to play moves like h3 to defend against this. But at least you guys saw the little idea on what to do if they play knight h5. This guy, this guy, come, bro, that's a knight, bro. Oh no, it's not a knight, it's a tactic. Because if I takes, there's queen takes. Okay, I'll take that back. That's a tactic. If I check, he's gonna block with the knight. Then I'm gonna play knight g3, hit the rook. If he takes, I take the rook, and if the rook moves, there's knight e5, and I can also play queen h7. So let's play bishop to b5 check. I mean, he also doesn't have to block with the knight. He could, yeah, he could move the king. Guy's king is on d6. And I'm not able to checkmate him. The move I want to play though is knight g6. So should I play f4? Definitely. Let's play f4. His king is also not safe. There's no in-between move here because I'm threatening to take the knight with check, so the knight has to move. And then once the knight move, we get the move that we wanted to play. Once we put a knight on g6 and hit the rook, his pawn on h7 is going to be hanging. All right, so all right, he played knight to f7. No, this is def. Oh, it's still not a free piece because of this. This guy. Okay, takes. He takes with check. I don't want him to take with check. And I'm also not able to play knight g6 because if he takes, the knight guards the rook. That was not bad at all. And I think pawn to g6 is also coming. So maybe I have to take the knight. And then once I take the knight, he takes my knight with check. And then I'm going to block the check, hit the queen, and hopefully try to castle my king. I'm trying to checkmate his king though. Ah, yo, he's playing some chess all of a sudden. He's playing some chess. Queen f6 is very strong. If I trade the queen, he has a better endgame because his king is active. Queen e8. Okay, I just can't trade queens. Yeah, I just can't trade queens. Let's play queen h5. Maybe pawn g6 and then I pull back to e2. But if I trade queens, he has the better endgame. His king is also not safe. So no need to trade the queens if his king is not safe. What I need to do is finish my development. Because if my knight was on d2, pawn to e4 would have been a very strong move. So bishop to d7. Another good move. Let's actually play knight a3 because I need to develop. At least if he takes, I'm able to take and my knight is in the game. If I had taken, then he would have played king takes. So then I'm going to castle, put my rook on the same line as his queen, and then try to play e4. All right, so he moved the king out the way. Now I'm going to take his bishop, and I think I just gained a tempo because he moves the king to c7, then to d7. Now I castle. I mean, my knight is on the edge of the board, doesn't belong there, but eventually I'll move it off the edge of the board. All right, so he moves his king off the same line as my rook. We need to open the position, so let's play e4. This is a pawn sacrifice, by the way. There's nothing guarding e4, but I just assume if he takes my rook on this file, the knight comes in with check. I'm trying to hunt this guy's king. Maybe if he takes, I actually just play knight c4 and try to get my knight to the e5 square. So he decides to play g6 first to chase away my queen, but at least now I'm able to play queen e2, guard the pawn. Yeah, he just escaped. He just escaped a lot of stuff. The guy's also artificially castling his king. Hmm. Okay, let's just bring more pieces in the game. Let's bring more pieces in the game. If he moves his king to b8, I'm gonna play knight c. Nah, that doesn't even work because the queen guards the rook. Hmm. Maybe I could play e5, hit the queen, but I don't see what I get from that. If I takes pawn takes, what do I get? All right, let's play knight c2. We need to find a way to make some use of this knight. It's crazy how his king just went on a run and remained safe. And then obviously he played pawn c4. That's a bad move, bro. Let's just take on d5. Now my knight gets the score that it wanted, which is the d4 score. And I can also win this pawn on e5. There's actually a way to win a pawn here. And if you guys find it, that's good. It's kind of advanced, but it is queen to e5 because we check the king and we hit the queen, so the queen has to take, and then once the rook takes, we have two pieces attacking the pawn on d5. He only has one piece guarding it, so this is now just good for white. Bishop to c4, and let's just take the free pawn. Let's just take the free pawn. I'm also attacking his bishop twice, so he has to trade rooks. So we're basically in an endgame where we're ahead by a pawn, which is all we want. And his pawn on c4 is also unprotected, and we know that we need to attack weak pawns in the endgame. Now, before I do all of that, I'm going to play rook to d7 because rooks on the 7 is in heaven. And putting my rook on d7 in, it kind of makes it hard for him to move his rook because in his mind, if he moves the rook, I take the pawn. So he moves the king. If I go here, he moves the king again. So let's go here. That way, it's also hard for him to move the pawns. If he allows knight a3, then it's just good for me because I'm able to win another pawn. Then I'm going to be getting my king in the game. All right, so that makes some sense. Rook e8, trying to get to my second rank. Everything is safe though. Let's just take the pawn because I'm guarding this. Oh, he's actually trying to guard this pawn. I thought he wanted to get to my second rank, but it's fine. Knight to a3, no way to guard the pawn. Yes, he has a check, but I'll just move. He also has a check here, but I'll just move. Rook to c6 guards the pawn. Check, we just move, hit the rook. So the rook is under attack. This pawn is under attack. He's not able to attack this pawn, and this pawn is already guarded. So instead, he attacked this pawn. Not bad. Let's take on c4 though. Like if he takes here, it's gonna take him a while for him to get his rook back in the game. And once I play rook to g7 and I take on g6, which he's not able to defend, I'm just gonna roll my pawns up the board. Okay, rook a4. Since he's attacking my knight, let's just take with check. And then we take here. Now we have three passed pawns. The plan is just to roll the pawn up the board. Passed pawns must be pushed. Yeah, let's just roll the pawns up the board. That's not the pawn to get behind, bro. It's already guarded. This is the pawn that you need to get behind. So now he's going to have to waste another move getting behind this pawn, which he's not. He moves the king. Let's keep rolling the pawn. Now he finally gets behind it, but we have more passed pawns rolling up the board. So I'm expecting resignation here. I'm just taking all his pawns, to be honest. That's a check, which forces king to move. And if he puts the king here and I take, he could also be getting checkmated. So he moves the king. Let's just take. I'm threatening mate, by the way. So grab. Oh, it's not mate, but I'm still able to check. He has to block with the rook. And yeah, once we take the rook here, it's just a matter of creating another queen. He finally resigns. More London system against 1,000 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1,000. Let's play some more London system. All right. Any d4 opening that we play, you're always gonna have to encounter some England Gambit type of stuff. What I like to do when they play the England Gambit is after Queen E7, just play Knight to C3, and now they just don't know what to do because they're used to this Bishop F4, Queen B4 line, and then after Knight takes E5, we play Knight D5. So we're hitting the Queen. The Queen is the main defender of the Knight. He has to first trade the Knight, then move the Queen. And once I go Bishop F4, I'm gonna have the biggest lead in development. So there's just too many ways to refute the England gambit. So knight takes, we play pawn takes. The queen is under attack. C7 is hanging. So he has to go back to D8, and then we just develop normally. So the queen goes back. Let's go bishop F4, developing the bishop, threatening a fork. So he has to play D6, which blocks in his bishop. And then now I'm gonna play e4 actually because maybe he's gonna play c6, and then once I move my knight, I want his d pawn to be very weak. Knight f6 is fine. I could pin the knight, but there's bishop e7. Um, let's just play rook to g1. Why rook g1? Because rooks needs files, bro. And it's also making it hard for him to move the bishop. If the moment he moves the bishop, we take here. Knight takes was played. Guys, also moving the same piece more than once in the opening. Queen takes, there's bishop e6. But then there's queen b5 check. Blocks with the bishop we take, but then there's rook b1, which wins this pawn. I'm still gonna play queen takes though, because the plan was to move the queen and castle on the queen side. So once the there's no bishop, there's no there's no bishop e6, because if bishop e6, that's a drawback mistake, bro. And there's no rook b8 due to queen c6. So the bishop was covering b7, it's no longer covering b7, so we take the free pawn on b7. And if rook b8, I'm right in time to check the king. Maybe even check the king on b5, because that's gonna force him to move his king. All right, so bishop e7 was played. We already spoke about this. The moment he moves the bishop, we're grabbing this. I like the idea of checking, but he's able to just run with the king. So let's grab the free pawn first. Let's grab the free pawn first. No one-side check. If he runs with the king, there's also bishop h6, and the amount of trouble that this guy is in, he probably doesn't even know the amount of trouble that he's in. He could lose a rook if he plays rook b8. He could lose his queen. He could get mate. We're 12 moves into London, by the way, and he could be getting checkmated here. This is what we spoke about. He's probably, well, maybe not. We have to play bishop to b5 check. Like, I want you guys to calculate a lot of stuff here. So pause the video, calculate a lot of stuff, and then try to predict what's going to happen. Like, there's not no tactic, but it's just a very nice idea. For example, if he moves his king, I could leave my queen hanging. If he blocks with the bishop, I take the bishop, and if he takes with his queen, he loses rook. Wait, wait, wait. Oh, wait, wait, wait. If he blocks with the bishop and I take, he could actually take with the king. Because if he takes with the king, I have to move, then he takes here. But f7 is going to be hanging. It's still completely lost. Yeah, so he did block with the bishop, but we're just going to take the bishop. He has to take with the king, by the way, because taking with the queen would be a drawback, blunder. But once he takes with the king, I just play queen d5, and then f7 becomes the threat. So king takes, I have no checks. We have to play here. Now the plan is to take on f7, check on f5. I would love to castle if he does not take the pawn, but let's see if he's going to take the pawn. Uh, uh, nah, nah, bro. It's over now. Bishop f6, I'm able to take with check. I'm just not sure which piece to use. If I take, there's king back. So let's take with the rook, hit the king, hit the bishop. So he had to block with the same bishop. Now I'm able to castle safely. Hopefully I'm not missing a checkmate. There's bishop takes d6, which is also a threat, because his bishop is pinned and pinned pieces don't protect. So there's just a lot happening here. Plus, I'm ahead by 3 whole points. England Gambit. Mm. All right, so he moved the king out the way, but that's going to cost him. That's going to cost him. That's going to cost him a piece. I mean, if you found it, that's good. But I have one attacker on the bishop. He has one defender. With this being said, once I hit him with queen e6 check, I check the king and add more defenders to the bishop. And it doesn't even matter if he blocks with the queen. Blocking with the queen doesn't change the fact that I'm going to take the bishop. So that's even more material for us. Blocks with the queen, let's just take the free bishop. If he takes, we takes. We're going into an endgame, which I want, because I'm ahead by, what, 6 points now? Okay, let's just take back. And then he attacks my bishop, which means he's going to be winning this pawn, which is fine. Let's just move the bishop. My plan from here is to get both of my rooks on his 7th rank. If he allows that, then he's going to be in trouble. So he took, let's play rook g8. There's plans of checking the king and then taking here. He attacks my rook, but let's just take the pawn, because now I'm threatening mate. And if he pulls his rook back, okay, he east side, so he moves the king. Now if I check, he's going to run. So let's just play rook to g7, and then I'm just going to take here on the next move. And if he tries to play rook to b7 to guard the pawn, then he gets checkmated on the next move. Yep. So the king is running. Let's grab the pawn. King has to continue to run. If the king goes here, that's mate. So the king just has to go here. And now it's time to set up our checkmate. I mean, all right. Here's what I'm seeing. If I take on a7, the king gets to run to the b5 square. So what if I play pawn to a4 first? If I take now, then it's mate. Maybe he's able to play king up, but then I still take with check. I mean, this could definitely lead to a mate. Yeah, that doesn't help, bro. He basically played rook a8 guarding the pawn, but I have like what, 3 attackers. He only has 2 defenders, which means once I takes, rook takes, and then take with the other rook, that's just gonna be mate, bro. He took, and that's just checkmate. More London system against 1100 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1100. Let's play some more London system. All right, so the bishop goes to c4. I guess he's going to play pawn to d5. Regular London behavior. And by the way, you could play bishop f4, then e3. The order of moves that you choose. So you could also play c3, then e3. Like once you get into your main London setup, you should be fine. And if you're trying to counter the London, I played a very nice game versus, I think, the 1400. But knight to f6, knight f6, there's this move, knight h4, that I like. And this is why I like to play h3, so that way my bishop is able to hide on h2. Because now once I play knight h4, he goes back to g6, I take the bishop. And then now I'm the only one who is controlling this diagonal. Sometimes it's best not to move the bishop though, because once I take, he gets a strong Maracsi bind, the rook could get the file, but the bishop is better than the knight, so I'll still take it. Bishop g4 is one way to do it. That's one way to do it. Hit the bishop, bishop move, hit the bishop move, takes. Yeah, that's kind of annoying though. I didn't intend on moving all the pawns on the side that my king is on. Let's not attack the bishop and play queen b3. One of the weak points of the London is also the b2 pawn, guys. So ensure that you keep that in mind. So playing against the London has a lot to do with putting a queen on b6. And black could also just put the queen on b6 to protect this. Now my plan is to play h3, g4, then I take. So I don't really want to play f3, g4, then I take. Queen b6, okay. Eddie Wise, not bad. Let's continue to develop. If he takes my queen, I take his queen, my rook gets the file. That's the whole point. I'm gonna castle, I'm gonna play h3, I'm gonna play knight d2. It's up e7. Okay, he's just developing. Let's play h3 to chase away that bishop. And then I'm gonna play g4 and then I'm gonna take. So the bishop goes back. It's a bit tricky because my pawn on h3 is gonna be a bit weak, and his rook is gonna be on the file. So I think it's actually not advised for him to castle since his rook is gonna be on the file. Wait. Oh shoot. Oh boy. There's actually a tactic here. There's knight takes g4 because my rook is unprotected. Maybe he doesn't know why I'm about. I think I have to play f3, the move that I didn't want to play, because if he takes my pawn, f takes. Well, now I'm able to play f takes, but I wasn't able to play g takes. So he develops the knight. Let's develop the knight. Notice nobody's trading the queens because we both know to take is a mistake. But if he doesn't trade the queens, then I could actually just decline the queen trade and then go for some sacrifices. So he needs to be careful. Pawn c5, good move, Eddie Wise. Okay, I think he wants to play c4 and force me to take his queen, which is not a bad move. I need to connect my rooks, but I don't want to castle, because if I castle, I lose this pawn. With that being said, I'm going to play king to f2. I think the queens are going to be traded off the board, so I don't mind playing a move like king to f2, unless he's like, oh, he just played king f2, let's not trade the queens instead. All right, taking was okay. Personally, I wouldn't have taken. I'm going to take with the e pawn, so that way eventually I could start some attack on this file. On a6, okay. So if I takes, he takes with the knight. That's his whole plan. All right, let's play rook to e1. That's the only file that I'm seeing right now, and the rook is on the same line as his king. I may play king g2 so that way I'm able to use this rook. No, I can't use the rook because it's doing a defensive role guarding my pawn. So I may just put the king on g2 so that way the king does that role. Ah, Eddie Wise blundered a piece. Did you guys spot the blunder that Eddie Wise just did? Basically, he plays bishop to d6 so that way if I takes, there's queen takes. But it's not that if takes, I'm able to take the pawn. It's just the fact that the queen is the only defender of the bishop, Eddie Wise, which means this is a removing the guard tactic. First, we take the queen, and then once we get the queens off the board, the bishop is just left unprotected. And I mean, he has to take back the queen, and then we take the bishop, and we're now just winning. So he took the queen, now we take the bishop, and we're now just ahead by an entire piece. Right, so knight goes back to c8. hits the bishop. Let's just play bishop to e5. I mean, I intend on trading a lot of pieces off the board anyways. I'm the one who is ahead by the piece. F4, F5 is also a plan because I want to open the center. And when it comes to opening the center, we think about pawn break. So he plays king up. Let's play F4. So that way we're able to play F5. I mean, G5 is okay, but there's many ways to guard this pawn. All right, knight b6. Let's play f5. I'm just trying to open the position, by the way, because his king is in the center. This is not necessarily me trying to checkmate his king per se. It's just me trying to open the position. I have the bishops, I have the rooks. I want to open the position. His king just happens to be in the center, which makes it way better. All right, so knight to b4 was played. Good move. I mean, hitting my pawn. And I'm, how do I even protect that pawn? All right, I have a little trick actually. If he takes the pawn, rook to b1 hits the knight, and then I'm going to be able to take on b7. With that being said, I have two attackers on g6. He only has one, so let's take the free pawn. And again, if you want to play against me, leave the comment of your username and the elo, especially 2000 rated players. It's hard to find 2000 rated players. Oh my lord! No, bro, that was not the I messed up because if I play rook b1, that's a fork, so I have to move the bishop first. I mean, I'm still threatening rook b1 though, but and his knight almost seems to be trapped. But there's always knight c4 here. If he plays something like rook c8, then I hit the knight. And then once the knight move, I take. But it would have been best for me to not allow this since it hits the bishop. It's just winning though. I mean, I'm the one who's ahead in material. Now if he this is just going to be the next move unless he plays knight c4, which helps me to trade. So putting the rook on f8 doesn't help at all. Well, the rook is on the same line as my king. I need to be careful. Let's play rook to b1 and attack the rook. Funny thing is, if he ignore his knight, instead take on g6, then I just move my king out of the way because he's putting his rook on the same line as my king. Okay, so he moves the knight. Before we take his knight, let's take the free pawn with check, forcing him to pull his king back. And I can also check and then pick up, well, not pick up the rook, but just trade off the rook. But he has to go to the back rank here. Ooh, we have a very nice tactic. Hopefully you're able to find it. But here's what I'm seeing. Here's okay. Ah, okay, here's what I'm actually seeing. It's many ways to it. It's actually a bit tricky. So I want to take the knight first before I do anything. But if I take the knight, there's knight takes g4, which is strong. Because if I take, he takes my rook. But I actually want to take on f6. And then if he takes on f6, I play g7, and that's a fork. So if I take the knight, he takes with check. Take the knight. He takes my rook. Can I checkmate this guy? Maybe knight d6 check. Force the king to move. Yeah, it's more than likely gonna work. Let's take on c4. If he takes back on c4, he's just making my life easier, which is what he did. So let's just take on f6 now. And I'm just, oh, there was actually pawn takes g6 here because the rook pins the bishop. But he took, now I'm able to play pawn to g7. A pawn fork on g7 is actually crazy. But Eddie-Wise has just lost the game. I'm just going to take a rook next move. And he will also be getting checkmated on the back rank. And he resigns. More London system against 1200 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1200. Let's get some more London system in. Pawn c6, let's just go knight f3. We're just playing with the regular London setup, and he's actually playing the Stonewall Dutch, which is a very interesting way to play. But usually when they play the Stonewall Dutch, I like my bishop on e2. Like, I want you guys to notice the trend on when I put my bishop on e2 and when I put my bishop on d3. That way you don't just blindly put the bishop on d3 for no reason. Knight e5, let's just get the king out the center of the board. Bishop to d6. Okay. Bishop to d6. I like this move, pawn to c4, because we're playing against the Stonewall Dutch. He has this Maraxibine covering e4, so we're never going to be able to play e4 to open the e file, which is why I didn't move my bishop. Because if he takes on d6, yes, I get double pawns, but it opens the e file, and his pawn on e6 is going to be sitting on an open file. Queen to c7. Now, that's a nice move that he just played. You notice he did not take. He played a move like queen c7, so it kind of forced me to take. Now, the question is, do I even want to take? Like, can't I just play knight e5 here? Knight e5, there's knight d7. And that, yeah, let's just go knight e5. It would be good if I'm able to force him to give up the bishop for the knight. Like, okay, let's say knight d7 and I play c5. Bishop takes, pawn takes. Yeah, that's not going to help me, to be honest. That's definitely not going to help me. Maybe bishop to h5 check. That's an interesting move. Bishop h5 check forces him to play g6. And then I takes check. Well, that also doesn't help me. I think he just needs to play knight d7 here. If knight d7, I may just take the knight, take the bishop, and then just continue with the regular London moves. Yep. Yeah, he did play knight d7. This is a very good move, by the way, because he's basically forcing me to exchange my very active pieces, especially if he decides to take on f4 here. That would also be a nice move. If he takes on f4, I'm actually going to take on f6 first, though, then take on f4. So, yeah, that's actually blundering. Yeah, he needs to just take back the knight, and then I take, and then I develop. So he took, I take, he moves the queen. Now I'm just going to play knight d2, regular London move. Now I actually have a plan, guys. Like, I have a strategic plan to get my knight to this very strong square on e5. And he also wants to get his knight on e4. But the thing is, let's say I play knight f3 trying to get my knight on e5 and he plays knight e4. I could actually give up my bishop for the knight, put my knight on e5, and my knight is going to be on e5 forever because his bishop is going to be on a light square and my knight is going to be on a dark square. So that's actually going to be very good for me. Now, one very aggressive plan that he could do though is play pawn to f4. Even though if he plays f4, I'll just play knight e5. I think he needs to find a way to use his knight to neutralize my knight. Bishop back to e8. That's actually standard plan. He wants to put his bishop on h5, and if I put my knight on e5, he plays knight to d7. So he's playing very well. And let's play rook to b1 actually. I'm going to start a pawn storm on the queen side because I can't attack the king. The center is almost closed, so I'm going to try to attack on the queen side. All right, bishop to h5 was played. Now I'm going to jump into e5. And yeah, he's playing it very well, by the way. So if you guys have seen my Stonewall Dutch video, this is exactly how I recommend to play the Stonewall Dutch. Now he's able to either put his knight on the e4 square, which is easily kicked. So I think it's best if he just tries to kick my knight from the e5 square. If knight d7 though, there's a lot of cases where I'm able to play f4. But for now, I want to just start an attack on the queen side with a pawn storm. And that's why I played rook b1. The plan from here is to play pawn to b4, pawn to a4, pawn to b5. And you don't necessarily have to do pawn storm on the king side for you to have an attack. Because the purpose of doing a pawn storm on the queen side is to create some weaknesses on the opponent's position. And once you start creating the weaknesses, then you could start attacking them. Okay, knight d7 was played. Good move. Let's just get rid of the knight. And then once the queen takes, we play b4. And now we're just going for our pawn storm. Now, he manages to trade all the minor pieces off the board. So you could say he got some equality. And okay, his move rook to pawn to b5 is not too bad, but I have a very nice plan to deal with this. So here's what I'm going to do, because I have to take the pawn, because otherwise he's going to take. I'm going to take on d5. It doesn't matter which one of the pawns I take with. He needs to take with the c pawn, so that way he doesn't have backward pawn. I'm just taking d5 so that way I give him the option of making mistakes. But the c pawn is what he needs to use. But once he takes with the c pawn, my plan is to play rook to c1, followed by rook to c5. Once I go rook c1, he's going to play rook c8 and challenge the file. But once I play rook c5, I attack b5. And if he takes, I take with the b pawn. And then we have a pass pawn. And, that's all we need. We just need a little slight advantage to win. But he's playing very well for 1200. He haven't blundered or anything. And usually when persons are playing so well, I have to press to win. There's a lot of persons that I beat that you guys could beat where you don't have to press to win, where you literally just need to not blunder your pieces and you'll win. But some persons you have to press, you have to take risk, you have to bring them to the end game. So rook c5, the plan is to play rook c1. He needs to quickly try to challenge the file. Okay, that's what he's doing. And okay, let's think about this. If I play a4 and then he takes, I take, and this is a pass pawn. And then if he takes, I takes, and I have two pass pawns. So let's play a4. Also, I'm attacking his b5 pawn 1, 2, 3 times. He's only guarding it twice. So I like the idea of playing b5. Now, if he takes, I may take with the d pawn and not the b pawn. which is not. It doesn't seem right though. So let's see. Maybe I take with the B pawn and then just pressure here. So takes, 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 and then I take here with the plan of trying to win his A4 pawn. Okay, queen to B7 is definitely a blunder. Because this is just a free pawn, bro. I'm attacking the pawn one, two, three times. You're only guarding it twice. Maybe what he sees is if I takes and then he takes, he gets rid of one of the defenders. But once I takes, if he takes and I take with the B pawn, because my rook is on the B file, it's going to be guarding the pawn on B5. So taking on B5 is actually winning material, which is nice because the guy's playing very well. If he takes with the pawn, I'm just going to take with the rook, bring him to the end game. And with my extra pass pawn, should be able to win this. So he plays rook takes first. Now we play b takes. Not only do we have a pass pawn, we're ahead by a pawn because once he takes, we take and we're winning. If he doesn't take, thinking, okay, I don't have to take, his rook is pinned, I'm just gonna push it, which is what he did. If I take, I'm mated. But if I push it, I have two pass pawns. And his pawn on a6 is very, very weak, which means my plan from here is to play rook a1, queen takes a6, winning two pawns. Yeah, this is now just over. This is a winning advantage for white. So pawn to a5, let's not rush. Let's play queen b5 attacks the pawn. I'm also threatening to play pawn c6 because pass pawns must be pushed. So he guards the pawn, and as the plan was, pawn c6. And one thing I like to remind you guys is two pawns on the sixth, two pass pawns on the sixth is actually stronger than a rook. So if you only had two pass pawn and the guy had a rook, you would have actually won. So this is now just over. Once he moves the queen, I'm just going to start rolling my pawn. Yeah. And then he's also trading the queens, which means it's even better for me. Actually, before we take the queen, let's play pawn to b7 first and attack the rook because the rook is the main defender of the queen. So if he tries to move his rook away, we take the queen. If he tries to protect the queen, we queen the pawn. And if he takes my queen, we play an in-between move, taking his rook first. Remember, it's also called a zugzwang, but yeah, it's just over now. Yeah. So he took the queen. We do not take back. We play the in-between move, taking with check. Then we take the queen. So he basically lost all his material. And then from here, we just promote to another queen and checkmate. All right, he moves the king. Let's just promote our pawn. And the opponent resigns. More London system against 1,300 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1,300. More London system. Knight f3 or bishop f4. Doesn't really matter what we play. He decides to play d6 though. So we're basically going to be seeing a London system versus the King's Indian, which is usually very interesting. I like to play h3 to prevent their knight from going to h5. And when we play against the King's Indian, it's best to not put the bishop on d3 because you could get trapped with e5 and then e4. So just put the bishop on e2 and then castle the king. Usually, this pawn could go to c4, but keeping it on c3 is also fine. Knight f d7 is a sign that he wants to push and then take and then hit our bishop. Shouldn't do too much. Well, let's play c3 so that way I don't have to worry about his bishop being a menace on this diagonal. So if I go bishop g5, there's more than likely f6. So let's just take stakes, hide the bishop on h2, and if e4, my knight gets the d4 square. Otherwise, I'm going to castle, play knight d2, regular London system setup, and everything should be fine. So e4, we play knight d4, centralizing the knight. Okay, so a6, I'm assuming, is to prevent me from playing knight b3, which means he's definitely going to be playing pawn c5 next. Which is fine. If c5, I'm just going to move the knight somewhere. Let's go knight d2, develop the knight, hit the pawn. If pawn c5, we go knight b3 or knight c2. I'm not sure where the knight belongs. No, I'm not sure. Okay, that's definitely weird. Not only did he not attack my knight, he didn't even try to protect the e4 pawn. That's a pawn, sir. What am I missing? Yes, the knight is unprotected on e4. Maybe queen d5, but then there's bishop f3. There's no queen g5. If rook e1, I just protect the knight or move the knight. If pawn c5, then I take the pawn. So that was just a weird move. And that's just a free pawn. Pawn f5 hits the knight. Knight c5 I like. I like knight c5. I mean, I'm threatening some knight e6. Worst case scenario, I can always pull my knight to b3. There's also queen b3 check, and then try to swing my rook on this open file on the same line as his queen. I think already we have this very nice winning position because I also have better development than him. Queen e7, okay, makes too much sense. Check, king move, then we fork. Bishop takes, we take, and it's a fork. So let's go with the same idea. Queen b3 check, force the king to move. And we're doing this instead of pulling the knight back. We're trying to move forward. Downside though, I'm not gonna lie, I'm about to trade my knight for a bishop that has never ever moved. So you could say I'm wasting some time, but I'm ahead by a pawn. Once I castle my king, my development will still end before his. So he definitely did something wrong in the opening. And after takes, I hit the rook, hit the pawn. C7 is also hanging. Okay, so the bishop took. Let's take, hit the rook. I'm also threatening c7. Don't forget about c7. Wait, even if he plays rook to c8, can't I just play knight c7, rook c7, and then grab the knight? Plus his rook is going to be under attack. So I could be ahead by 2 pawns. Okay, rook to e8 was played. Don't sleep on this bishop, guys. Like, nobody sees this bishop on h2. Let's take on c7. All of a sudden, that's a fork. Not only are both of his rooks hanging, his knight on b6 is also hanging. So if he tries to move one of the rooks, I don't even take a rook. I take an entire knight. So knight c6 was played. Watch this. His rooks are still forked. No need to rush to take the rook. That's an entire knight. I'm ahead by 5 points, and he's about to lose one of his rooks. And he resigns. More London system against 1,400 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1,400. Let's play some more London system. Let's go bishop f4 here. Pawn d5. Let's play knight to f3. Pawn e3 is the idea. Pawn to c5. This is actually very strong. This is how I play against the London system, by the way. Let's play pawn e3. And then after knight c6, I usually play queen to b6 and then attack the pawn. All right, but let's see. Let's play pawn c3, regular London moves. The correct move here, I think, is queen to b6. There's a little idea with knight a3. I think it prevents him from taking because knight b5 threatens to fork, and then his queen is not gonna be on a good square. So let's try this. I mean, pawn to b6 to guard the pawn is good. Queen to b3 to guard the pawn is good, but this is the way more aggressive way to do it. Just play knight a3. I'm also threatening knight b5 as well. Like if he allows knight b5, bishop c7 or knight c7. So he plays pawn to c4, which means now I'm not able to put something on b5. That was a nice move, bro. All right, what if he takes? Can I trap the queen? Not seeing how I'm going to trap the queen. And if I play rook to b1, there's bishop to f5. This is how I recommend that you guys play against the London, by the way. Because I think, okay, but now I'm going to play b3 because if he takes, oh my God, I just blundered a piece. No, I didn't blunder a piece. Because if pawn e5, we take on e5 with the pawn. And if he takes my knight, I take his knight. But then he has bishop to b3. Oh my God. He needed to play e5 instead of e6. Because, okay, even though my knight is under attack, I get time to defend it now. All right. Do we just play queen c1, takes, queen takes, and then knight b5? Yeah, let's just play queen c1. Nah, let's just play b4. Nah, let's play queen c1. Let's play queen c1. If I could just develop my bishop and castle, that would be nice. But then moves like knight e4 is very strong. If he plays knight e4, he's threatening to play knight takes c3 followed by bishop to b4. So that's a very nice idea. My plan is to take on c4 though. So what if he plays knight e4? Okay, he took. Let's just take back. Queen, I don't think that was good. I think he's being greedy trying to win a free pawn. But if he plays queen takes b3, knight b5, I threaten to fork. His queen could also get trapped. He needed to play something like knight e4. Yeah, this guy's very greedy. Where's he from? Bulgaria. Veselin Vel. Come on, bro. You should have played knight e4 there. Funny thing is, if he plays a6 to prevent knight b5, I may still play knight b5 because if he takes, he's losing his rook. Haha. Greedy, greedy, greedy. Greedy, greedy, greedy. Greedy Veseline. How is he gonna prevent himself from getting forked? Can I trap that queen though? Like that would be nice if I'm able to trap the queen. Let's say we hit him with knight d2. Where exactly is the queen going? Greedy Vesseline? Because this is over, by the way. It's crazy. We're 10 moves into the London. He had a very nice position, but he's hunting pawns. It's like he's probably thinking, "Oh my God, how do I not get forked? I don't even care about forking him." Knight d2 traps the queen. So if he knows what's best for him, he needs to play knight e4 to prevent my knight from going to d2. If he knows what's best for him. All right, so pawn e5. Ha 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 ha. Greedy Vesseline. I'm not gonna fork you, Vesseline. There's knight d2, bro. Where do you put that queen? Can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, can't go here. That's a queen, bro. Good game. That's what you get for grabbing my free pawns. Don't take Akim's free pawns. That's rule number one. So he sacked the queen. Let's just take the queen. I mean, he gets two bishops for it. So it's, I mean, it's bad, but it's not like, I don't know what to say. The guy has no queen. All right, he took, let's just take, funny enough, I have a queen. He has two bishops. My advantage is only +2. But hey, it's let's pawn e4 I like here. Let's play pawn e now. Pawn e4 takes, sack the rook, pawn d5. How good is that? Play e4, he gets 1 point. I sack the rook, he gets 5 points. So now I'm down 6 and I have 3. But then I'm gonna play d5. I'm down 3, but I'm gonna gain 3. That's like that's like equal though. He just sent me a message in the chat saying I was too greedy. Wait until he sees the video. Greedy Vesseline. Pawn e4. Pawn e4. Pawn takes. Okay, let's play pawn c4. Pawn c4 kind of comes with the same idea. I want to just play pawn d5 and apply pressure to his knight. So he took, sack the rook. Now, sacking the rook doesn't work this time. So let's just take with the queen. Now I have two pieces attacking c6. He only has one. So something like bishop to d7 makes the most sense in this position. Bishop d7, can I play knight e4? And if he gets greedy again, we check on f7. But then the king moves. And I have nothing. So let's not play that. Bishop d7, we just need to play d5. Like, I'm ahead in material. I just want to trade queens off the board here. All right, so knight e5 hits the queen. Let's just trade. That's the whole point of everything. We want to trade pieces off the board. My queen is still under attack, so we need to be aware of that. And then once he plays his move, whether he takes with his knight or the other knight, we play queen b5 and attack the pawn on b7. So knight takes, we play queen b5, attacking b7, pinning the knight, still trying to trade some pieces off the board, maybe knight f3 or knight c4. Okay, so he guards it. Let's go knight f3 here. Like, I'm just trying to trade. I'm also attacking his knight. I mean, he could always just castle though. Yeah, just castle, bro. Let's just trade. That's the point. I want to trade first. Knight takes. Now we play rook to d1. Why? Because rooks belong behind the pass pawn. And then I'm probably going to play rook c1 followed by rook c7. We have the queen. It's only +2 because the guy has a bunch of pawns. So we need to start chopping off some of those pawns. I have a little trick though. Because my queen is on the same line as his. Okay, that prevents it. If rook d1, I was going to play d6. All right, let's see. How do we win this game? I'm going to play rook a4 with ideas of rook a1 and then target his a7 pawn. I don't see his king being a weakness here, so we just have to attack the pawn. So rook c7, we play rook a1, targeting the pawns. I have two attackers. He has one defender. Rook c7 guards it. Can I takes, rook takes, check, bishop block, takes? Nah, I can't do that. Rook to c5, I can't take either because takes, the bishop blocks. That bishop, man. Let's just pull this back. Let's pull the queen back to b3, keeping our pawn on d5 guarded. Rook to c7 guards the pawn, and then I'm going to play rook to a6, threatening some little tactics on his a8 rook. I mean, it's winning, but he's resisting, though. He's resisting. Right. Rook c7. Plan was to play rook a6. I'm actually threatening a pawn here, guys. Like, I'm attacking twice, he's guarding twice. Oh my God, Vesseline. He's seeing everything. He saw this. All right. Vesseline. Um, Knight c5 is also a threat. How do I have a queen and can't win? Okay, let's play queen b5. Let's be patient. Let's be very patient here. Because bishop, oh, we got him. You see, greedy Vesseline strikes again. He's attacking my rook. Maybe he didn't see the whole idea of this. That's not actually a free pawn because the rook is on the same line as the other rook. So take this pawn. If he takes, we take his rook. So that's just a pawn. And I'm attacking his bishop. And I'm going to play rook c6 and force the rooks off the board. So yeah, now it's over. Remember, if you want to play me like Vesseline, just leave the comment of your username and the elo. So that way it's easy for me to reach out to you guys. He resigns. Opponent is now 1500. Let's play some London system. Guys from Kenya as well. So probably will be a long game. All right, knight f6. Let's play knight f3. Pawn d5. Let's play e3. Regular London stuff. Bishop goes to f5. And let's just put the bishop on d3 regardless. Like if he takes, we just take back and then castle the king. So he took. Let's just take back. Pawn e6. Let's play knight d2 first, finishing our development. Queen to b6. I'm not going to guard the pawn. Let's just castle. If he wants to take, that's on him. One thing you guys could keep in mind is whenever a person's attack like these types of pawns, if you're able to like skew up the piece and force the piece away and win back this pawn, then that's usually good for you. So knight to d7 was played. Usually the plan is to play e4 or c4. In this scenario, I like c4 because I want to play c5, hit the queen. Anytime he takes, I'm able to play rook b1. And he's developing his bishop trying to castle. Now I'm going to play c5. And the plan from here is just to roll the queenside pawns up the board. So we're going to be doing a pawn storm here. There's one more important move that I almost forgot about. Okay, pawn queen a6 is kind of weird though. That's kind of weird. All right, there's two ways to punish this. First way is just to take and said, hey, your pawns are massively weak. Knight b3 to a5 and it's hard. Or just move the queen and continue to roll the pawns up the board until I'm able to trap his queen. Let's just take the queen. Let's just take the queen and then play knight to b3. No, I don't mind this knight a5 move because he has two weaknesses in his position. Pawn h6 was also not necessary. Let's immediately start to target the weaknesses. And I mean, if he allows knight e5, then I should be fine. He needs to play rook c8 and not knight b8. But I'm expecting rook c8. Rook c8 is a very natural move. Pawn to g5 was played instead. Hmm. Okay, instead of playing bishop g3, I'm going to play bishop e5, putting my bishop on this diagonal. The guy's also playing very fast. As a Kenyan, you shouldn't be playing this fast. The plan is, if he takes on e5, I take on e5 and he loses this pawn. That's also a very nice move. Very, very nice move. Because if I move my knight, he takes, and then once I take, this is weak. So first I'm going to take on f6, attack the rook, and he needs to take with the bishop. If he takes with the knight, then I get access to the e4 square. If he takes with the bishop, then I have to go back to d2, and then he finally goes to c8. But he took with the knight. You're playing too fast. Now let's just play knight e5. And I won this game based off of creating the weakness with queen takes a6, targeting the weakness with knight b3 to a5, and then knight e5 is just winning the pawn. So again, understanding weaknesses, being able to spot weaknesses, crucial. All right, rook to b8 was played. Offense is the best defense. If I takes, he takes, but we're not trying to trade nothing. Let's play b3. I don't want to trade pawns. I'm trying to win his pawns. Once I take on c6, a7 is also hanging. Okay, so h5 was played. I mean, he didn't try to defend the pawn, but he couldn't, you know? Didn't do anything. It's just a free pawn. Hit the rook, hit the bishop. And a7 is also hanging. So he needs to play a move to not lose his a7 pawn. I'm expecting rook b7 because putting the rook back on a8 is it's kind of weird. Yeah, so now I have a pass pawn. I'm trying to target his a6 pawn as well. Doesn't seem possible. Taking the bishop is just a good way to convert. Let me just bring more pieces in the game. Let's play rook c1, getting the rook behind the pass pawn, because maybe I could take and then start rolling the pawn up the board. Who knows? Knight d7, and he blundered. No? Did he blunder? Guys, how do I get a pawn on c6 to fork him? That's exactly what I'm thinking of. I don't think he blundered, but that's my plan. If I'm able to move my knight, for example, take on e7, king takes e7, pawn pushes a fork. Take on e7, there's actually knight takes e5 first, which is just a nice in-between move. Oh my lord, I'm so strong. Come on, guys. You need to spot this. Why to play? Hopefully you spot the tactic. But you spot the tactic. Don't be watching the video brain dead now. Knight takes e7. If king e7, pawn c6 is a fork. Knight takes c7. If he takes on e5 first, knight c8. Now his knight is under attack, and I'm threatening to play knight d6, and that's a fork. If you find that tactic, drop it in the comments, because that's a very nice tactic to find. Now it's just over. I'm ahead by a pawn. I'm about to win a piece. My guy Vibes Man was playing too strong. Yo, did you guys see the 500 game? What's the difference between a 500 player and a 1500 player? Because it's a 1000 rating gap. But sometimes just playing those guys feels hard. All right, so king takes now we fork. He needs to take my knight. If he takes my knight, I'm just going to take his rook. I'm going to have two rooks. He's going to have a rook and a knight. But if he dares to move the knight, we hit him with rook to c8, promoting our pawn and winning the game. So he took, we take, knight d7, there's rook c8, and that's GG's. Come on, bro. Now he's just, that's a knight, bro. Come on. Now rook to c8, and it's just over. I mean, he kind of has to take the rook. Otherwise, I take his rook. I'm still gonna queen. There's no way for him to prevent queen. All right, let's just queen. And then from here, I'm just gonna checkmate him. He gets a few checks, maybe one check. Rook comes down. I'm gonna play queen e5 so that way his king is not able to escape. And then rook c7 check should lead to mate. So he moves the king, rook c7 check, that was the plan. And then once he moves the king, we check here. It's not mate because the rook has to block, but that's just a checkmate. More London system against 1600 players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 1600. More London system coming your way. Ooh, pawn to f5. Now, this is going to be a London versus the Dutch. Someone is playing the Dutch. Let's go bishop to f4. E6, we go knight f3. Knight f6, we go e3. We're just getting the London system set up out the way first. Like, we don't necessarily have to think. And this is why they say, including myself, say persons who play the London system is lazy. Now, I'm not putting the bishop on d3 because it would be pointing towards a pawn chain. And the other reason why I'm not putting the bishop on d3 is because he has this very good bishop on b7. So, majority of the time, it's good to move my knight and then play bishop f3 to trade off this good bishop. Okay, bishop e7. Let me just get my king out the center of the board. He got his king out the center. And now I'm going to play this h3 move. We already know why we're playing h3. We know the purpose of h3. And after pawn d6, okay, that's kind of suspicious, no? Because that's a weak pawn. Can I just play knight g5? No. Like, he plays d6. I kind of want him to play d5. If I'm able to force him to play d5, not only does he weaken the e5 square, but he blocks out his bishop. Oh, but then there's knight d5. If I try to attack e6, there's knight d5. Knight g5 is a move though. Knight g5, queen d7, bishop c4, but then there's knight d5. So let me continue to develop first. Let's just focus on our development first. All right, so all the pieces are active. We did not blunder in the opening, which is good. So now it's just about the middle game plans when it comes to the London. Knight d7 is definitely suspicious, bro. How on earth is this guy gonna defend his e6 pawn once I play knight g5? And this is a weakness, by the way, guys. Like, sometimes you guys are wondering, yo, I make the game seem easy. How do I even see these? Because there's a bunch of other moves that I could play. I'm able to I'm able to identify weaknesses in the opponent's position. Now, you should be able to identify weaknesses because I say this every day. A weakness is a pawn or square that can't be guarded by another pawn. So I attack e6, which can't be guarded. Like, he just cannot protect it with any piece. I mean, he could try bishop d5, but then I'll play c4 and attack the bishop. Maybe h6 to hit my... Oh, that's actually a move. Bishop d5, pawn c4, pawn h6. If I take the bishop, he takes my knight, and if I take his pawn, he takes my pawn. So bishop d5 is not a bad move. Well, if bishop d5, do we play bishop f3? And if h6, I take. And if he takes, I take on e6. Yeah, I think that's the move. Bishop d5, we actually need to play bishop f3 or even bishop c4. I think they both work. Yeah, so he moves the rook to e8, knowing that he's going to lose the pawn. Let's just take the free pawn. Now he has to move his queen out the way. Yeah, he's definitely in trouble now. Well, he lost the pawn. I think that's all I'm going to be getting. The fact that he lost the pawn. And okay, my knight is fine. My knight is fine. I can always go back. But I want to keep my knight on the e6 square. The only way for him to attack my knight is by moving his knight, though. So from here, let's just play queen to c2, connecting my rooks. And I'm also attacking the unprotected pawn. Remember, you have to be able to identify weaknesses. Unprotected pawns. Pawns are squares on the in the opponent's half of the board. Unprotected pieces. Unsafe king, which is a king that is not castled or a king where all the pawns in front of it has been moved. What else are weaknesses? Whenever there's like, let's say this was a rook and this was a queen and the rook was on the same line as the queen, those are also weaknesses. And if he plays g6, I would also be forcing him to move a pawn on the side that his king is on. So now he plays knight f6, indirectly guarding the pawn. Now if I takes, he plays bishop takes, and my queen is going to be under attack. And I think he's also trying to play knight f6 next move to just cement his knight on the e4 square. And you guys know how I feel about pieces on my half of the board. So let's just play f3 here. No, I have to be careful. I have to be careful. I don't want my knight on e6 to be trapped. I want to be able to play d5. So I'm actually going to play c4. So that way, any attacking move he plays on my knight, I play d5 and I'm protecting it. All right, so he plays knight f8. He just wants to trade off my good knight, and I don't want to play d5. It's going to give him material, so let's just take on f8. That's fine. I'm ahead by a pawn anyways. And now he plays bishop takes f8. If I takes, he's still going to play bishop takes. I like the idea of playing pawn to d5 because now if you notice his bishop on b7 is pointing towards a pawn chain. Like you never want to have your bishops pointing towards pawn chains. So me playing d5 actually makes his bishop weaker. Then he moves the queen out the way. All right, so maybe he wants to pull the bishop back here. I have a plan of taking on e4. And then if he takes with the pawn, we play bishop to g4 with the idea of playing bishop e6. But I think he's going to play bishop c8 because he needs to activate his bishop. So with that being said, let's just play bishop to d3. We're trying to neutralize this knight on e4. Now I have 1, 2, 3 pieces attacking it, and he only has 2 pieces defending it. And notice I didn't take because I know that it didn't really do anything for my position. So remember, you should only trade if it improves your position. Now, if his knight takes and I take, his pawn is going to be under attack, and he's going to be forced to play something like g6, which will be pushing a pawn on the side that his king is on. Queen e7. Okay, he's just applying more defense to the knight. Makes sense. Now if I takes, pawn takes, and my bishop has to move. I'm thinking about maneuvering my knight to the e6 square. So knight f3, maybe bishop c8, knight d4, bishop d7. But my knight is definitely more active if it's on d4. So playing knight to f3 is just a good way to continue to improve my position. Eventually, I want to swing my rooks in the game, but there's actually no files here, and I'm not seeing any way to create a file. Pawn h6, he wants to play pawn g5, but it's fine if he plays pawn g5. He will be pushing pawns on the side that his king is on. So let's continue with the plan. Not only am I now attacking the pawn on f5, I'm also threatening to play knight e6. Bishop to c8 seems to be the move that prevents that. Knight c6 attacks the queen, but that's all it does, attacks the queen. I don't think my knight is as active on the c6 square as it is on d4. Because remember, guys, like your knights will always be more active if it's in the center of the board. Now, another thing I notice is I actually have a battery lining up towards f5. So if I attack the knight and the knight move, I take on f5. But he just decides to move the queen and didn't protect his pawn on f5. So we're definitely going to be taking that free pawn, especially since it comes with attacking the queen. Now, not only do we attack the queen, is once I take on f5 and attack the queen, I now have 2 pieces attacking his knight. He only has 1 piece guarding the knight. So me taking on f5 here, this is actually winning a piece, which is crazy because the queen has to go somewhere. And even if the queen attacks my knight, I take his knight and guard my knight at the same time. Yeah. So the queen goes back. We take the knight, and now we're just ahead by what, 5 points. Then the bishop finally goes back to c8. All right, my knight is under attack twice, but I'm already guarding it twice, so I don't necessarily need to move the knight. But I just personally think the knight is just very active on the d4 square. And, I'm thinking about ways to get my bishop to h7 or get my bishop to g6. Okay, I think it's time to start getting my rooks in the game or trade pieces off the board. I think it's time to actually trade pieces off the board because I'm ahead by 5 points. So g5 hits the bishop. Let's just pull the bishop back. That's fine. Bishop to g7 improves his bishop. There's one move I like, and because my rook is on the same line as the queen, I really like this move, pawn to f4. Pawn to f4, queen to e7. Yeah, queen e7 is going to be annoying. With that being said, let's not rush. Let's play rook to e1 first. So that way, once I play f4, my pawn on e3 is not completely unprotected. And this is why it's important that you bring your pieces in the game before you start your attack. Because once you bring the pieces in the game, the attack is just going to flow. Because all your pieces are going to be supporting and coordinating with each other. Now he plays bishop d7. I mean, he's connecting his rooks, but now I'm able to play f4. And if he takes, I'm not going to take with the pawn, obviously, because the pawn is the only defender of the knight, and we don't make drawback mistakes. So if he takes with the pawn, we play rook takes and attack the queen. And then we have the file. And once the queen move, I could even play rook e1 and put both of my rooks on the open f file. Okay, rook e7. He didn't trade and I actually had something prepared for this. I'm actually not going to take, even though it opens the file for my rook. I'm going to play pawn to f4. Because, okay, obviously he wants to double up on the e file, attack my bishop. If my bishop move, he takes on e3. But, okay, this is also called a Maraxibine. I don't think I've ever used that word on here. But a Maraxibine is basically when you have two pawns like this, just controlling the same square. If you're able to put a knight into a Maraxibine that can't be guarded by another pawn, then that's like the strongest knight. And, okay, this bishop is not really doing much, so he may have to take. But then if he takes, I take, I get a pass pawn, his queen is under attack. So he plays h5. Maybe he wants to play h4. My light squared bishop isn't useful anymore. I need to find something better for it to do. And he's also threatening to take on b2. I didn't see that. And that's a free pawn that I could take. But let's play b3 first to not lose my b3 pawn. And if he push, I just move. Yep, let's just move the bishop. Where do we put the bishop though? Isn't the bishop... Okay, I'm going to play bishop h2. If I was able to play bishop e1, then that would have been good. But now I should be able to play bishop to f3 followed by bishop h5. You guys notice how even though the bishop is in the center of the board, it doesn't have any good diagonal pointing towards the opponent's half of the board. But pulling the bishop back to f3, then putting the bishop on h5, it points towards the opponent's position. This is how you play positional chess. This is strategic chess. This is how you slowly improve the activity of your pieces. And yes, taking on c7 is a free pawn. It will always be a free pawn because if he puts the rook on c8, his rook is just not good. Maybe it's good for him to play pawn c6. So maybe I'm just going to take the pawn, hit the rook, and then go back to e6. So a5 was played. If I take the pawn, he takes this pawn. So let's continue with our plan. Bishop h5, improving the position of the bishop, forcing the rook to move. And then the plan is to just march this pawn all the way up the board, then play bishop takes e5. Yeah, this is bad for him. He moves the rook, didn't even try to protect the pawn. I think he wants to give me the pawn. Let's just take it. And now I'm attacking the rook. My pawn on f5 is also guarded. My pawn on e3 is guarded. So once he moves the rook, I put the knight back on e6. Now my plan is still to play e5 for e4 followed by e5. Okay, doesn't do much. If he takes, I just take back. So let's just play e4. He also has 40 seconds on the clock. So at this point, he has to play very, very quickly. And it's a very easy position for me to play as well. That's also a free pawn, by the way. And then he moves the rook. Now, once I take this pawn, I have 3 pass pawns to roll up the board. This rook is also almost trapped. I mean, the only square where I don't just outright take the rook is h7. And then once he puts the rook on h7, I'm able to play bishop g6. Now he has to put his rook on h8. Look on his pieces. Now I play pawn to e5 hits the queen. And okay, this is over. This is resignable. He pulls his queen back to d8 and then he resigns. More London system against 1700 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1700. Let's get some London system out. Ooh, immediate pawn to c5. Let's play c3 here. to protect our center. The plan is to eventually play e3. And this queen to b6 move is very annoying when it comes to the London, but let's see if he's able to take it. What if we play knight a3? I know about this knight a3 move. And then if queen takes b2, we play knight b5, but it doesn't work here because the knight is unprotected. All right, which means we have to ensure that we defend that pawn. Yeah, let's just play pawn to b3 to guard the pawn. I'm not trying to lose that pawn. And then I'm going to continue with the regular London setup. Okay, he took on d4. Let's just take back. That's fine. I'm assuming he wants to play knight c6 to target my pawn. But the moment I play knight f3 or e3, the pawn is just safe. The whole point of playing the London is just to ensure that we're safe and we're not going to be falling for any traps. We're all right. Pawn d5. Just trying to develop, control the center. That's good. Let's go knight f3. Regular London move. Pawn e3 is coming. Bishop d3, knight d2, get the king out the center. He plays e6. I mean, it blocks out his bishop. I was expecting him to develop this bishop first. Let's continue to develop though. Let's go knight d2. I mean, if he plays bishop b4, I immediately kick the bishop. And if he plays knight c6, we play e3. All right, knight e4 is an interesting move. That's definitely an interesting move because if I takes, he takes, and then it becomes easier for him to put something on this diagonal. But let's just play, no, yeah, let's actually play queen c2. Queen c2 attacks his unprotected bishop on c8, and it also applies pressure to his knight on e4 twice. So he is at risk of losing a pawn, and this is because he moved the knight more than once in the opening stage of the game. I guess he's trying to punish me because I played b3, and b3 is not really a move that you'd want to play. Now that he plays knight c6, we're definitely just going to be taking here. Now, let's think about it though. If takes, 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 there's bishop b4 check. I have to block the check. And then once he takes, I play king takes. I am going to be ahead by a pawn, but my king is not going to be safe. I prefer to have a safe king. I think once he manages to put any piece here, that could be an issue. I mean, there's nothing I could do to prevent it though. Like, what if I play a3? Then I'm defending too much. Let's just take the free pawn. It's a very risky free pawn to take, by the way, but it's still a pawn at the end of the day. Once he takes, I play queen takes, and then bishop check is very strong. Now I need to think about what I'm doing. Like, do we block takes, king takes, or do we just play king d1? I think my king is safer on d1, and then eventually I play e3, bishop d3, king e2, and then my king is just going to be safe. Now, at this point in the game, he's down by a pawn. So if he does not use his initiative that he has right here, which is my unsafe king, to gain something, then he's just going to lose the game. But let's see. So bishop to b4 check. We play king to d1. And this is not the safest king, by the way, but he needs to do stuff like get a rook on the d file, play moves like pawn to e5, and he needs to ensure that all his moves are attacking moves after this. So bishop to d7 makes sense. He wants to put something on the c file, I'm assuming. And maybe he wants to move the knight and play bishop to c6. I still need to ensure that I develop though. So let's just play pawn to e3 here. I want to develop my bishop and then play king e2. Like if that happens, then I'm going to be safe. Now, one thing I need to be on the lookout for is this pawn to f5 move. Because if I put my bishop on d3 and he plays pawn to f5, my queen could actually get trapped. So that's the only thing that I need to keep in mind. With that being said, I may have to put my bishop on c4. Rook to c8 was played. We need to develop. It's not this square. He has a very active position. Let's play rook to c1. Let me put my rook on the file. I need to have as much activity as possible. Or maybe I need to just, I kind of wanted him to play f5 because I was about to say maybe I need to just pull the queen back so that way it's easier for me to develop. But he's forcing me to do it, and him playing f5 is weakening his pawn on e6. So now I'm going to pull my queen all the way back to b1, actually. And then I'm going to play bishop to d3, king e2. If he's not able to play e5, and this is the whole point, I have two pieces on e5. Okay, bishop a3. Very interesting move. He's attacking though. He's attacking. That's not what I like. I have to put my rook somewhere. So rook c3, he attacks it again. So c4 is the score for the rook. Yeah, let's just play rook c4. Bishop e2, bishop d3, king e2. That's the plan. Once my king is safe, I should be good. Now, this bishop on a3 is also annoying. If I could magically pull my bishop back to c1 and trade it off, that would be nice. But that's not possible. because in the future I would like to play rook, put the other rook on c1 and control the c file. But let's see. What he needs to do is castle and play knight a5, and then if I take his rook, he takes my rook, and then he plays rook c1. But I don't think that plan is fast enough because, okay, I don't know why he pulled his bishop back to e7 though. Maybe he thinks I want to play rook a4, which, rook a4 makes some sense, but yeah, that's weird, bro. I wouldn't play that move. Bishop d3, knight b4, I'm able to take. So let's just play bishop to d3, king to e2, rook to c1, and all my pieces are going to be very active. And I could also artificially castle my king. So my opponent had an initiative, but I don't think he's using it the right way, though. Like, you don't move the same pieces more than once in the opening. All of a sudden, it looks as if we're equally developed. Like, my king is not safe. Okay, king f7, he's now connecting his rooks, but I'm right in time to connect my rooks. King to e2, and rook to c1 is the next move, which is why I said his bishop on a3 was annoying. Because if he allows rook to c1, okay, bishop f6, no clue, because pawn to e5 is not possible. All right, yeah, he starts to play weird. All of a sudden, he's playing weird. Let's go rook c1. Now point out one piece that is not active. That's my king. The king is a bit too active here. All right, pawn to h6 I was expecting. He wants to play g5. He wants to attack my bishop. He wants to start some attack here. Like, the plan was to play bishop to d6. I'm worried about knight takes d4 check though, or just knight takes d4 in general. So I may just play king to f1, just walking my king where it belongs. And then if pawn g5, then bishop d6. And if knight d4, I go bishop to c5 first. And then, at that point, he has to sack his rook, and I will have a better position. So let's just get our king to safety outside of any checks. And then once I play king g1, this is what you call artificially castling the king or manually castling the king. So pawn g5, we go bishop d6. The plan is to play bishop c5. And I'm also just going to be attacking my opponent on the queen side. Like, if I'm able to play a3, b4, okay, pawn g4 is very aggressive. I'm not able to move my knight forward. Knight e5 is a possibility. Knight e5, knight takes e5, pawn takes e5, hit the bishop. I don't think I want to do all of that. I think I'm just going to play knight to d2 because I'm not really seeing any huge threat that he has once I play knight d2. I still want to play bishop to c5 sometime in the future. Even if he plays knight takes d4, there's still bishop c5. My bishop on d6 is unprotected though. Like, remember guys, whenever you have unprotected pieces, you have to pay attention to it just a bit more, because that's how tactics happen in the position. Pawn to h5. Now, there's an attack coming towards my king, but we don't care. Like, you guys should know how to deal with these types of attack anyways. The moment the pawn goes to h3, we play g3. And if the pawn goes to g3, we could take, then play h3. So we're not afraid of any attack that it seems as if he has. With that being said, I need to start my own attack though. My bishop is also safe back on f4 because the pawn is now not able to attack my bishop. So let's just play a3 followed by b4. Very, very slow attack here, being patient. Eventually, if I'm able to get my knight on the c4 square, that would be good. What we're not going to do, which is what a lot of you guys do, is whenever you see a pawn storm coming towards your king, you start moving the pawns, and that's how you lose. Remember, once he plays h3, we play g3. And if he plays g3, we take, well, if he plays g3 now, then that's just a free pawn. Let me just play king to g1 to just ensure that I am completely safe and I'm fully manually castled. So that way, if he plays h3 and I play g3, if my light squares becomes under any danger, I can always play bishop f1, and then my bishop covers the g2 square. Step back to e7 was played. Now he's trying to trade the bishops off the board. If I takes, there's knight takes, and I guess he wants to put his knight on the d5 square. So I don't want it to be that easy for him. Now, I think I have to trade the bishops, but on my terms. Remember, guys, to take is a mistake. You should only trade if it improves your position. Me taking this bishop, putting his knight on e7, literally does zero for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull the bishop back to c5. Still trying to trade the bishop, but at least if he takes, I play rook takes, and then if he plays knight e7, he did it on his terms, and I could continue with my plans of, let's say, knight c4. All right, queen back to c7 was played, so maybe he wants to play pawn g6. His queen is on the same file as my rook though. So now I'm thinking about taking the bishop because knight takes is not possible. And then once I takes, he has to play king takes. And then I could start some threats. Or I could push, takes. It's very tricky. But I don't think his king is safe. Yeah, I don't think his king is safe. I don't need to take it though. That's the thing. I don't need to take it. If he pushes g3, we take on g3, then play h3, and we're completely safe. So let's just play b4 here. I want to play b5 and then take, and then, because my rooks are on the same line as this king, that's the type of tactics that I'm setting up. I really like what's happening here, though, because you guys are now learning how to deal with pawn storm. And this is actually the two main ways how to deal with it. How to deal with pawn going to h3, how to deal with pawn going to g3. So pawn going to g3, we don't want to take with the h pawn. If we take with the h pawn, his rook will still get the file. But once we take with the f pawn and then play h3, his rook is on the file, but he kind of has to like sacrifice something on h3 to really use the rook. Now, what's the downside of what I just did? And I was just about to say, I think he just blundered, by the way. I was just about to set it. I think he needed to play bishop g5 because by moving the pawn from f2, it weakens my e3 pawn. But now that he plays b6, I'm now able to play exactly what I want to play. There's a tactic here, by the way, and I was explaining it the whole time, so you should be able to see. But we're just going to be taking on e7, and then once the king takes on e7, I have two rooks on the same line as his queen, which means his knight is pinned. And when a piece is pinned, what do? We PP on the PP. And just like that, we're winning a piece. And I think it's because my time is low. Like, if you guys are playing against me and you notice that my time is low, I want to give you guys a tip. Like, don't try to beat me on time because the only reason why my time got this low was because you were playing good moves. It's not because you're playing fast move. So now that he's playing fast move, it's like he's playing bullet. Bro, my bullet rating is like 26, 2700. So you're basically playing bullet against me. I'm chill with all of this time on the clock. So if you have more time than me, continue to play good moves so that way I think. If you just play fast move, I'm not going to think. Especially now, I don't need to think. I'm ahead by a piece. Queen to b4, just trade the queens off the board. This is GG's. Okay, so he took. Let's just take back. And this is me just trying to trade everything. And he's not trying to trade, which is good. But let's put the rook on the 7th rank, pinning the bishop, attacking the pawn. He guards the pawn, PP on the PP at its finest. Now, remember what we said whenever we're pinning pieces, we don't take them until they try to get out of the pin. So unless he moves, okay, or unless he does something like this. But I'm going to take with the rook because I want to just trade everything off the board. And now I'm threatening a fork. I want to put my knight on e5. He played b5 again, trying to flag me, bro. Don't try to flag me. Play good move. No, you lost the game. That's a fork, by the way. All right, so from here, it's. I mean, he's trying to flag, but 30 seconds is just too much time. Yeah, now I'm just gonna roll my pass pawn up the board, and he will be mated. Okay, let's just roll this one up the board then. Since he's gonna catch this one, let's roll this one up the board. Now I queen the pawn, and from here, he just resigns. More London system against 1800 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1800. Let's play some more London system. And this one is coming from Uganda. Knight f3. Notice how sometimes I play knight f3, sometimes I play bishop f4. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's not about memorizing. Like, if you have to remember something, it's best if you attack b2 if you're playing against the London. But what was I saying again? I was saying if you have to memorize something, it's best if you memorize the setup. Yeah. If you have to memorize something, memorize the setup. So the setup is this: e3, bishop d3, and castle. So he plays e6. Let's play e3. Remember, the weakest pawn in the London is the b2 pawn. So always assume they're going to play queen to b6. Knight f3. Let's play bishop to d3. Simple development. And bishop to g4 was kind of weird. Like, pinning my knight doesn't really get anything. I guess he's just trying to keep the pieces on the board so that way he's able to outplay me. But now I play knight d2, support my knight. Bishop to d6 was played. Usually when bishop to d6 is played, it's good to play knight e5. In this position, though, if he takes, I'm just going to take back. So let's play h3 to chase away the bishop. And then he gave up the bishop for the knight. Let's take on f3. The plan is to play knight e5. knight e5 is a nice way to attack someone's king in the London. If he takes, just take back. Yes, the pawn on f4 is weak and doubled, but it's easy to protect it with g3. And once I castle and play rook e1, I'm going to be the only one who has a file on the chessboard. And there's also knight e5. So knight d7, we get the king out the center of the board. Rook e1 is coming, knight e5 is coming. He also castled his king. Let's first play rook e1 so that way he has no hope of putting his knight on e4. In these types of positions, it's best if they play moves like c5 because he needs to attack somewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to start an attack on the king side. So he did play c5. Let's go with knight to e5, just putting my knight in there. If he takes, I take. I'm going to have what is called an isolated pawn, but I'm seeing myself attacking this guy's king. Okay, bro, c4 just makes it way easier for me. Now I pull the bishop back. I have no real weaknesses in my position. If queen b6, there's also queen e2 to guard the pawn through the x3. And now I can prepare a very nice attack. Pawn to f5 will come. And pawn to f5 also gets rid of my double pawn. All right, knight takes e5. We play pawn takes e5, undoubling the pawns. Think he's going to play knight e7. Queen h5 threatens mate, pawn g6 prevents it. Eventually he's more than likely gonna play f6, but f6 weakens this pawn too much. Hmm. Let's play a rook to e3. I want to play a rook to g3. This is called a rook lift, by the way, and I'm trying to target the pawns around this king. So usually whenever you're trying to attack someone, it's best to attack the pawns and the squares that are only being guarded by the king. So my main targets in this position is g7 and h7. Okay, rook to e8 was played, which means f7 is also a target. And he's going to be able to play knight f8. And, the famous saying, there's no mate with a knight on f8. So maybe I need to target f7 and g7. But let's keep bringing pieces in the game. Let's go queen g4. I'm not immediately seeing the attack that is coming right now, but now I'm just focusing on moving pieces towards this king. So rook to e1, so that way every piece is active. I may also just push my h-pawn up the board. And I'm having a hiccup. But once he moves f6, I'm going to take. And then his e6 pawn is going to be weak. Okay, queen e7. He's trying to defend with everything he has. Let's play rook to e1. We're going to be attacking with everything we have. f4, f5 is also a plan. I'm not sure when I'm going to play it, though, because if f4, he plays g6. And, I don't want to move my pawns forward, and then it's hard for me to move around my pieces because my pawns are in the way. So I'm focusing now on optimizing the placement of my pieces first. Okay, see, he plays g6 anyways. Okay, where are the weaknesses? Maybe he's gonna play h5 eventually, but I think I'm definitely gonna play h4. Like if he allows me to play h5, that's good. But if I think he should play h5, but if he plays h5 and I move my queen, it leaves a lot of doors open for some sacrificial ideas on g6. So he plays king up. Now I'm able to play h5. So eventually I should be able to use my rooks. There's also one little idea where if you're attacking someone and they put their rook on h8 and you're able to protect h6 and then play h6, then they're also going to be they're going to be playing without their rook basically. So that's also a nice idea. Now how do I do this attack? Let me target the f7. Let me target f7 as well. Like I'm definitely attacking and he's definitely defending, but we have to ensure that we're able to break through the attack. I know exactly how I'm going to win this game though, because the position is just too hard for my opponent to play, which is why he's using so much time. Eventually, once I optimize my pieces in the next few moves, he's going to put his pieces in some cramped position, and then eventually I'm going to be able to win. All right, how do we get this rook in the game? Let's go rook to e3. Let's maybe I should have put this rook on h3 and this rook on f3. I want you guys to notice how there's no files on the board, but I'm still using my rooks like files are on the board. And that's where a rook lift comes in. A rook lift is like hacking a file. So he's doing the right thing. I'm attacking on the king side. The center is closed, so he's counter-attacking on the queen side. So he's doing the right thing. I'm gonna play rook to f4. Comes with some ideas of rook to f3 to target f7, but I actually want to just put one rook on g, one rook on f, or one rook on h, and then figure out the attack. Wait, what is this guy thinking? Why would you push a pawn on the side that your king is on? Come on, bro. Don't do that, man. Don't do that. Maybe he thinks I have to move my rook and then he plays h6. With that being said, I'm gonna play h6 first. Then once he plays king takes, then I play no. After he plays king takes, yeah, then I play rook f3. He's still not able to take due to the mate. So let's play h6. All of a sudden, my bishop is now active and there's a lot of lines pointing towards his king. This is due to this is because I sacrificed a pawn, by the way. So if it doesn't work, then I'm just gonna be down by a pawn. But I like my position. Okay. So king takes. If rook to f3, there's just okay, let's play rook f3 actually. I mean I could check, but he goes back. I don't want to miss anything because you guys are always pointing out my misses. Rook f3, if he takes the rook, he's mated. So let's play rook f3. I'm threatening a lot of stuff. I'm also threatening rook f6, which is nice. Rook f6 is nice because if rook f6, knight f6, rook f6, I'm going to have three attackers in the game and, his rooks aren't really doing anything. Okay, rook f8. And this is how we conclude the game, guys. Find the tactic that white will play and win. Did you find the tactic? I'm assuming you did. Finding forcing moves, look for checks. So rook f6 check. If knight f6, we play rook f6, and the king has to move. Well, the king doesn't have to move. In fact, if he moves the king, that's mate. So he has to sack his queen, and then we take the queen. So rook f6 is just completely winning. And this, hopefully, you guys took something from this. Do not push pawns on the side that your king is on. Now it's just over. Yeah, now it's over. So knight takes, we play rook takes. He has to sacrifice his queen, and then we're just going to take with the pawn. And once we take with the pawn, his king will still be trapped, which means queen to h3 is going to be a forced mate. Sack the queen, we take, king can't move. It doesn't matter what he plays next. He's going to be getting mated. He moves the rook, but that's just a checkmate. More London system against 1900 players. Stick around. Opponent is now 1900. Let's play some more London system. We're seeing immediate pawn to g6, so it's gonna be a London versus the kid. Let's go knight f3. Just going into the regular setup. Knight f6, we go e3. He castles the king. Now we play c3. And usually here they play d6. If we see d6, we play h3. Remember that knight h4 is dangerous. It's not really dangerous right now. If knight h4, there's bishop e5. So he plays b6. Okay, I'm still going to play h3. And then from here, it's just regular development. Bishop b2, we play knight d2. The bishop could go to either d3 or e2. Now, against the kings in the end, I think it's best if the bishop is on e2 because there's a little trap that you guys could fall for where the opponent tries to play e5, e4. So that being said, let's just put the bishop on e2. And I think well, yeah, that's kind of weird how he's playing it. It would have been best if he plays d6, knight d7, e5. But knight c6, d6, e5 is fine. It's just that he's blocking his light squared bishop. Let me just get my king out the center of the board. All right, so the London setup is done. Now we have to think about ways to make progress. Now, making progress in the London, a lot of times a pawn is on d5, but making progress in the London is about, do we play e4 or do we play c4? Pawn to d6 was played, which means pawn to e5 is definitely coming. Now, I know that he's going to play e5 next, and I know that my bishop is going to be under attack. So I'm just going to pull my bishop back to h2 from now. I'm going to hide the bishop on h2. And, there's one thing in the London with this bishop on h2, sometimes persons just don't see the bishop. And because they don't see the bishop, like it comes back in the game and surprise them. But let's take on e5 here. And if he takes on e5, I was thinking about playing this move, knight c4. Now I'm attacking the pawn 1, 2, 3 times. He's guarding the pawn only twice. And I'm also allowing him to play pawn to e5, but if he plays pawn to e5, yes, it gains a tempo on my knight, which he did, but I think he's blocking out his light squared bishop. So I have no issues with that. From here, I'm still going to put my knight on the e5 square. I was thinking about knight d4, but I have no issues with just putting the knight on e5. If he takes, I play knight takes. My knight is not getting trapped. I'm targeting his f7 pawn. I can always play queen b3 to apply even more pressure to f7 as well. Now, notice that none of us is trading the queens because we know that to take is a mistake. So if I take his queen, I give his rook the file. If he takes my queen, he gives my rook the file. So usually in these types of scenarios, you only trade the queen if on the next move you have something very nice. Otherwise, persons like to move the queen out the way, then put the rook on the file to force the opponent to move their queen out the way. Yeah, which is why he played queen to e7. He's just trying to move his queen out the way. All right, so I'm thinking about queen b3 here. There's no pawn to b5, there's no knight to a5, and if he ever takes, I'm just going to take back and I'm safe. So let's play queen b3, especially since he's also trying to play rook to d8. Now someone is going to definitely try to use this file. And I don't think it matters which one of my rooks I put on the d file because I can't use my rooks anywhere else. So I'm just gonna put one of the rooks on the d file. Okay, knight d5 is a nice move. Now he has one, two, three pieces attacking my knight, and I only have two pieces defending the knight. So I'm forced to move the knight out the way in this position. And because I don't want to move the knight back and I can't move the knight back, I'm going to be taking on c6. So to take is a mistake, but I kind of just had to trade there. And I'm still not afraid of pawn b5 because there's knight a5. Maybe he plays a5, a4, but I can always play a4 in the future. So let me just use the time to activate my rooks. Let's play rook f to d1, and then maybe I could even double up my rooks on the d file. Who knows? Okay, rook to d8. He's doing the exact same thing. And okay, rook to d2, pawn to b5. I'm able to attack the bishop. I'm just trying to ensure that I'm seeing what possible attacking moves the opponent has. Pawn b5 is the only attacking move I'm seeing. a5 to a4 is one. If a5, there's always a4. What are the possible moves that he could move a piece forward? Maybe queen here, but I attack the queen. So rook to d2 is safe, followed by rook to d1. And then at that point, I will have every single piece active. All right. Five is an interesting move. It's a move I saw, knew it's a possibility. He just needs to be careful about the fact that he's playing f5 with my queen on this diagonal as his king. Now, automatically, I thought about knight d6, but it won't work because I don't want to sacrifice a knight just to get two pieces for the rook. Because at that point, it's going to mean I'm going to be down in material. But eventually, he wants to play f4, which makes a lot of sense. But let's continue to bring more pieces in the game. Then he plays king to h8. Very good move. All my pieces are now active. I just need to think about making progress. I want to be able to play pawn to c4. My knight is in the way. Knight back to a3 is a possibility with ideas of playing knight b4. And I can also play bishop c4 or pawn c4. So I think moving my knight out the way has to make some sense now. It just has to. Oh, I think I'm attacking the knight if I move my knight as well. So let's just move the knight. I have one, two, three attackers. He has two defenders. So I'm also attacking his knight on d5. And he saw that, decided to move his knight out the way. How does this trade benefits me? All it does is it gives his queen an open file. Now there is an unprotected bishop, and I'm thinking about playing queen to c4 to hit that unprotected bishop. Yeah, let's go queen c4. That's a nice move. That's the only target in his position. And then if he moves the bishop, this bishop that is hiding on h2 comes in very handy because then I'm going to have two pieces targeting his pawn on c7. Now, if he takes on d2, I just take back. And then maybe at that point he plays queen e6. But then after the trade, he's going to be losing his pawn on c7. So the question is, how does he not lose his pawn on c7? Okay, so he traded the rooks first. Let's take back on d2. Now I'm the one who has the open file. Maybe the plan was to play queen e6, but we saw that if queen e6, we take takes, and then c7 is hanging. So still, if he still loses the c7 pawn and gives me the open file, then that's going to be a bigger advantage for me. All right. After a very long think, he decided to play bishop to d5. Makes some sense. I mean, do I take the bishop and then take the knight and allow rook to d8? Because what I'm seeing is rook d8, I have queen e5 attacks the queen, and then he gets access to my second rank, hitting the bishop and the pawn. So maybe it's not time to go for that. Now, do we take on c7? Queen takes c7, bishop takes c7, bishop takes a2. That was a nice move. I don't think I want to rush this. Let's take on c7. I don't want to give him access to my second rank that easily. Now I'm expecting queen takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. And I'm wondering if pawn to c4 traps his bishop. I don't want to be too ambitious. Let's take here. Okay, maybe I'm just going to play knight b5 and then try to play knight d6 because we're in the endgame. And the whole idea is to attack the pawns in the endgame. So bishop takes a2, we play knight to b5. Bishop to d5, that bishop to d5 defense that he fondled, that was a nice defense. Like, I thought it was just over, but now we're trading pawns. But he had to think about it for a while. So I'm going to have a lead on the clock in like maybe the next 5 moves. And then he's going to probably blunder in time pressure or something like that. Now, because I'm attacking a7, it wouldn't be surprising if he plays knight d5, because then if I takes, he takes, or rook c8. Because if I takes his pawn, he takes my bishop. Now I use the time to move my bishop. Let's say bishop to f4. Bishop f4, there's no rooks. Well, there is rook c5. And then if I check, he's able to block with even his bishop. So I'm going to put the bishop on f4 instead. a7 is still hanging, by the way. But now he's able to play a6. Maybe bishop d8 would have made some more sense. Or maybe I should have checked, trade, and then he wouldn't have been able to protect a7. It's crazy. Sometimes I just see the move right after I play. But now if he plays a6, I'm thinking of knight c7. a5 makes some sense, which means this pawn I'm now trying to target. But he's now not able to attack my knight. So what if we go back to c7? The only way he's able to punish me if he's able to attack my knight. Well, there's knight d5. What if we go rook to d6? Notice all the types of move that I'm trying to suggest are moves where we're attacking his pawns. Rook d6, knight d5, rook d7, but then he takes here. All right, let's go with knight d6, hits the rook. He's not able to play rook to d8 because this is a fork. This is also a very well-known pattern, by the way. And then my next move is more than likely going to be pawn c4. Like, even if it doesn't trap his bishop is going to be his bishop is just not going to be playing for a while. And then he's going to be forced to play something like bishop b3, bishop a3. So now that he plays rook c5, okay, do we play b4? No, let's just play c4. Let's try to trap the rook. Not the rook, the bishop. Okay, he moves the knight. Now I'm able to check and take though, bro. That was a blunder. And that's because he was in time pressure. We spoke about the time pressure. But basically what he just did, he puts his knight on the same line as my rook. So I'm now able to use, it's like a discovered attack, checking his king, moving the knight out of the way, and then forcing his king to move. Then we just take the free knight. And just like that, we're about to win an entire piece. But he's able to take on c4. So, at least my bishop is not trapped. Let's just take though. And then after rook takes, he wants to take on b2. So to prevent this, I'm going to play, let's say I check. If I check, he moves the king, then I check, and then he loses the bishop. But then if I check and he moves the king here, I check and he loses the bishop. With all of that being said, once I check on h6, he has to play bishop takes h6. And because I'm the one who's ahead in material, I'm happy trading pieces off the board. Okay, rook to b4 was played. Now I want to check, but then he just puts the king in the corner of the board. Um, how do we do this? Let's just play. All right, let's check king over. Rook moves. He's not able to take due to the fork. All right, I'm going to repeat the position. Let's check. King move. And then I play rook to c7, just repeating the position, knowing that he's not able to take. But now that he puts the king on g7, then I play bishop to g7. I just wanted to give him the option of blundering. Pawn b5. Now we go back, hit the rook. I'm threatening his pawn on b5. Okay, he moves the rook, which means if I takes, he's going to take. And we don't really want to trade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check on g7. His king is not able to go in the corner, so he has to step away from the corner. And then I'm able to take a free pawn. And his idea is definitely to try to create a pass pawn, but the pass pawn is not going to be fast enough. Like, let's just get the rook behind one of the pawns. So that way, if he push an knight takes, he's not able to play pawn takes due to the pin, which means he has to play rook takes, and then he's just going to lose the pawn. Okay, he checked first. Let's just take. And pushing the pawn here doesn't do much. Like, the pawn literally will never be able to go to b2 because I have two pieces covering it. With that being said, we're just going to be rolling our pawn off the board. He's also not able to get behind the pass pawn. Okay, he pushes. Now we take with the rook because we're trying to trade pieces off the board. He's still not able to go here because my bishop controls it. And then it's just game. Like, let me just improve my king. Like, we both have low time, but his time is way low. And I'm the one with the huge advantage. So now I'm just grabbing all his pawns until I'm able to checkmate his king. Okay, let's just take, not still mating the game. continue to roll my pawn. All right, let me give a check, cut off his king. And then once I go here, that's just a checkmate. More London system against 2000 level players. Stick around. Our opponent is now 2000, finishing off the London system with a bang. Knight f6, let's go knight f3. Pawn c5, let's go pawn e3 here. And then he plays a6. I wasn't necessarily trying to play bishop b5 though, so personally I think that is wasting time. Let's just play c3, continue with our development. Bishop d3 is coming next. So bishop to f5 was played, and I'm thinking about taking this pawn on c5. That looks like a pawn to me. Okay, let's take the pawn. I think to win back the pawn, how's he gonna win back this pawn? Because I already have a pawn on c3, I should be able to play b4. So if he plays e6, I play b4, and if he plays a5, I don't necessarily have to react to it just yet. So at that point, I could even check his king first and then play knight b2 with very nice development. And then eventually I play a3. Pawn is a pawn at the end of the day. And that's why he played a5 first, you know? That's why he played a5 first. So once he plays e6, it makes it hard for me to play b4. But I don't see what's stopping me from playing b4 anyways, though. Honestly. I mean, I could check, but I'm assuming he's going to block with the bishop. Pawn b4. Pawn b4. Takes. Let's play pawn b4. Hopefully, I'm not being greedy and I get punished for it. I mean, the guy's playing pawn move. I'm playing pawn moves. I'm gonna go bishop b4. I'm gonna go knight d2. I'm not saying I'm not gonna get developed, but the guy gave me a pawn, bro. I, I, I want him to play e6 because if I'm able to check and then he plays bishop d7, he kind of defend with tempo. So he did play e6. Now once I check, he has to block the check with something, which is using more time. Now I like the idea of knight d4, which hits his bishop and apply pressure to the knight. There's also knight e5, rook c8, take on c6, pawn takes e6, bishop a6, and the rook is trapped. Because if rook a8, bishop b7, and the rook has nowhere to go. All right, let's test out this line. Knight e5, pp on the pp. Could have also done it with knight d4, but I don't really care about that bishop. With that being said, maybe he needs to play queen c8. Like, these are also patterns that I know, guys. Like, just being able to see this bishop covering here and my light squared bishop is present, I know that if he plays rook c8, I take, which is what he did, and his rook is about to get trapped. So I won a pawn. Now I'm about to win the exchange with knight takes c6 check. Because once he takes bishop a6, and because of both of my bishops working together, his rook is just trapped. Even if he plays rook to a8, bishop to b7 traps the rook. I mean, maybe at that point he has rook a7, but then I take another free pawn. So let's say the rook is not trapped, but I'm going to get another free pawn. So rook to a8, bishop to b7 hits the rook on the pawn, rook a7, then we grab the pawn with check. At that point, he has to block with the knight. And okay, I mean, it's time to start trading, right? I'm going to be ahead by 2 pawns in an endgame. The 2 pawns could also be connected past pawns. It's completely over. So rook a7, grab the pawn with check. Knight has to block. Okay, how do we do this? If takes, I'm fine. Queen a4, if I rook takes, I push. Trying to trade some pieces off the board. Let's finish the development though. Development is crucial. Let's develop. But eventually I want to play queen a4, grab the knight and start rolling the pawns up the board. That's the simple plan. And if he takes on b4, I take back, which is what he did, which means now I have not 1, not 2, but 3 passed pawns rolling up the board. It's over now. But at least he didn't allow the queen trade. Bishop to e7. Let's get the king to safety first. No need to rush. He also castled his king, and now I play knight b3. I'm trying to get my knight to the d4 square. Eventually, I'm going to be rolling the pawn. Like the overall plan is to roll the pawn. He plays e5, which appears to be another mistake because the knight is protecting this pawn, but I'm attacking the knight. So this is about to be a removing the guard tactic. Once I get rid of the knight, if he takes back my bishop, I take the pawn, and that's another free pawn. It was also a drawback mistake because he's leaving d5 hanging, and if I take his knight and he takes my bishop, I take his bishop. So yeah, our 2000 is having a very bad day. So rook takes was played. Let's take on e5. We're ahead by 3 pawns, 3 whole entire pawns. Knight d4 is still an idea. Once I play c6, hit the rook, c7 is coming next. Bishop f6. He's also helping us to trade. Let's just trade. If he wants to trade, I'll trade. Queen takes. Knight d4 or queen d4. Let's go with knight d4 since it gains the tempo on the bishop. Maybe he's gonna try to. That's his only last hope to try to attack g2, which is why he played bishop to e4. But now I'm able to play queen g4, hit the unprotected rook, connect my rooks. All my pieces are not active. My rook on f1 isn't really doing much, but I could definitely start rolling the pawns up the board. All right, moves the rook out the way. Pass pawns must be pushed. Moves the queen. Not sure what that does. I guess he wants to play f5, but pass pawns must be pushed. His rook is now under attack. And if f5, queen f4 hits the rook. Pawn to f5, we go queen f4. Just trying to trade some pieces off the board. There is pawn g5 here. Then I'll more than likely gonna play queen e5. Rook b6, pass pawns must be pushed. I told you I have three of them, not just two. I'm pushing this one as well. Okay, we already said g5, we play queen e5, centralize the queen, a5 is coming. Okay, pawn to f4. Maybe he wants to play f3, but then I'm just gonna take. So let's continue to roll the pawns up the board. Maybe he thought I blundered. Or is this a trick? Oh, if I takes, he push. And I takes, bishop takes, and then he's gonna want to checkmate me on the light squares. I just have to be careful though. Let's just take. Okay, or he just wanted to sack his rook for the pass pawn. Let's take a free pawn on g5 with check. Once the king moves, I'll play knight d4, hit the queen. The queen could go back to e5 with check. I just need to be a bit careful not to fall for any funny business along this g file. For example, bishop takes g2 is actually not a bad, well, not now, not now. His queen is under attack, but it's an idea that he could try to use. All right, so the queen moved out the way. Can't push my pass pawn, but I could take a free pawn. And then the rook hits the queen. Now we have to be careful. Remember I told you guys about g2? Let's give a check first, force the rook to block. And then once the rook block, we play f3. Like he has nothing here, by the way. This is just over. f3 hits the bishop. That's a pawn. I can also just bring more pieces in the game. And then knight e6 also applies pressure to the pin piece. Ooh, look at that. Offense being the best defense. If I take the bishop, I'm mated. With that being said, pawn to g3 prevents the mate. His rook is still pinned. The bishop is still under attack. Knight e6 is still going to apply pressure to the pin piece. So he's attacking my rook, but I don't care. Let's apply pressure to the pin piece. Because once he takes my rook, I'm just going to trade everything off the board and he's going to be forced to resign here. Now he has to trade the queens. I take the bishop, roll the pawns, and he resigns.